good old days. Like I said, eventually you'll have the iceberg meme of like long-standing history that every esports had, and deep in the darkest depths you'll see the forum, you'll see get gooped merch. People won't remember it, but some will. Going into the draft here, though, I think the one thing that the last draft kind of shows us is that even though some picks are particularly powerful, I do think you need to protect them. I think if you get Wraith, you need to make sure that you're not up against a Viscous, ideally, because Viscous just hurts your game plan a lot. Conversely, if you get Grey Talon, make sure that Paradox isn't in play. We know DMS likes picking Grey Talon if available, and what's the first thing they do here? They ban Paradox. This is incredibly smart if you want to give your Grey Talon maximum ability to do what they want to do. It forces more knockdown purchases off the other side, and also for the very pivotal moments of like 6 to 10 minutes, your Grey Talon probably won't be having a whole lot taking them out of the sky, whereas if Paradox is left in the game, guess what? You're probably getting swapped a lot.
So DMS now, they get 1 pick, Buff and Joyers get 2. And we did see the pocket ban out of Buff and Joyers like we saw in the last game to kind of just be a throwaway ban. So I'm looking at DMS, like what do they really want to secure? Do you really want to go with the Grey Talon for Prestis, or do you want to go for the Wraith for Playwithme? Because Wraith has been single target banned against him in the past, and it looks like they will go for the Wraith. So they're leaving Grey Talon open. Now this for me, ZP, I'm kind of curious, will we see Buff and Joyers actually use Grey Talon? Because they do have 2 picks for themselves to use here off the bat.
No, it depends on how they value it. They might not value it as highly, but I think based on the last tournament, they probably will be picking Grey Talon. I think the best possible picks they could go here, assuming that they do value the Grey Talon, right, would be Grey Talon and Viscous. You get the Viscous down early, which, starts creating your segment of heroes that it's hard to use telekinesis against. However, they also really value Ivy, so it might be Grey Talon Ivy, and if that case, DMS should immediately pick Viscous. That's kind of where I'm seeing this here. For Buff and Joyers, the question is, what do you value more right now? The Ivy or the Viscous? Based on their history, I feel like it's going to be Ivy, and that gives DMS a great opportunity to immediately come back with Viscous +1. That's how I'm reading it right now.
I'm excited now to see if we get see what they do. You've invested in me, ZP. It's like you're good at your job or something. It's pretty crazy.
Oh, Mirage, okay. Yeah, well, yeah, Mirage is also not banned for a change.
Mirage super impactful in the way we saw Buff and Joyers play out the urn. I think it was the very first urn in the last match where they just sat on it for such a long time. Having Mirage be allowed to split push, and then you can just obviously use the Traveler to get over to help with the team fight. So I'm liking it, but I feel like ZP kind of hit a really smart play there, Dan, with like, if you pick Viscous, you deny it from the enemy team, so your Wraith can be a bit more successful in these fights.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's interesting though. We're gonna get the 7 prioritized over the Viscous, so it leads me to believe that obviously that they feel like maybe they've got a player that's either a particular specialist, or they fear that Buff and Joyers might take the 7 away. What angle do you think the 7 pick comes in, given the other dynamics you're saying that are also at play with Viscous, for example, still up the grab?
7 just comes down to, I think they want a good hero for Hardeki here, and Hardeki's played a whole lot of 7, so just securing comfort picks for, or players on your roster that you feel like need to have that little comfort pick. Instead, they go for the Yamato. I don't hate the Yamato pick here. I do think Viscous might have been a smarter pick, especially now you've invested into the Wraith, but Yamato is also a character that Buff and Joyers, I feel like, values even more than they might realize.
Psycho's insane on it. Definitely one of the best Yamato players I've seen for sure.
Yeah, it's also a good comfort pick on the DMS end. But yeah, I think it makes sense to take the Yamato away. It gets rid of the macro play that we saw in the last game where Buff and Joyers can get 1 pick and do mid-boss. If they get 1 pick, they probably won't force mid-boss the same way now that they don't have Yamato. But the downside by denying the Yamato is that you've given up the ability to grab Viscous as a block, and now Buff and Joyers has solidified their team comp a little bit more with it. So, you gain something, but I think they're also losing something by not grabbing the Viscous when they have the chance.
Okay, we're going to get the guys coming through for DMS as well. And given what we have already with the Raid 7 and Yamato, maybe it's more of a tanky guys that we could potentially expect. We'll have to see how pick 5 and 6 come through for DMS. But seems like there's a lot of options here still for Buff and Joyers. And we're not going to make the same mistake here, guys. Infernus is still in play.
Yeah, I was about to say, where's Infernus? We're thinking the same thing. What? Okay.
Oh, Warden. All right. Well, ZP, as always, giving the floor to you. ZP is a newly found Warden hater. Captain, president of the Warden Hate Club.
To be clear, purely within the context of ranked games, below the top tier. I think in a comp game, it's fine, but you have to do really well in the mid game. It puts so much pressure on the Warden to get value in the mid game. His strongest power spike is when Last Stand is active, when you have Leap and Surge of Power. You get those items, you have a moment where you can be a bully. But if you get behind, it's bad. And if you don't get a game-winning advantage by the time you get to 20 or 25 minutes, well, you're just weaker than other characters you could have put in the role. So it creates a very clear time window for buff enjoyers to establish control of the game. That's what I think.
All right, well, aim is coming through for DMS. What are we looking for, Jason? What are we missing for buff enjoyers here? Are you a fan of the Warden pick? Where are you at?
I'm really not a fan of Warden lately, to be honest. Majestic leap changes obviously did not help him too much. The fact that he can't be interrupted ulti now, which is kind of nice. I'm expecting maybe a support to be picked up for buff enjoyers. I mean, obviously at some point you have to pick a support, but I don't know. I'm kind of feeling like a support, maybe a McGinnis picked up here, maybe an Ivy, because we obviously know they like to play Ivy, but I'm assuming DMS is going to respond with the McGinnis themselves, which leaves buff enjoyers with their final pick. And it's got to be, in my eyes, like another carry, probably another 6-pick Infernus with the way they're going.
Yeah. No love for Lash today so far, by the way.
Yeah, that's true. Zanya was definitely the Lash player before. Not going to see it, unfortunately, since they did get knocked out. But do they want to go? I don't know. I'm trying to think, like, where are you going to play? Because Mirage obviously going to put in a solo. You could put Viscus in a solo, which we don't see too often, but I know it's very possible. And then we see, man, I don't know. I kind of like in DMS's roster, to be perfectly honest with you guys.
Yeah.
Like, I'm loving the Kelvin Abrams Geist, Yamato to dive, Seven gets it in the backlines without anyone really engaging on him except maybe Viscus. I feel like DMS technically won the pick battle here, ZP.
Yeah, DMS's team makes a lot of sense. I think you could have made an argument maybe to go for something like McGinnis over the Kelvin, but Kelvin also still really good in that role. I do think you see Infernus coming out 6 again for buff enjoyers here, which frankly is just, it feels like lunacy that all of a sudden Infernus is going last when Infernus has been going first. But hey, it's a game early on in comp and things change every week. And
I can hear
now
Infernus screaming right now. Left was just like, how is Infernus going 6-pick?
This won't be the case in NA. I will assure you. You look between the two teams, I definitely like the DMS draft a bit more. I think that, and for nothing else, have taken away a few picks that buff enjoyers like to use. Particularly, they've stolen away the Yamato. They got the Abrams, which is, in my opinion, I still think is like Listic's best hero. So I don't know. I look between the two teams. Buff enjoyers is not going to have the early power that they had last game, especially given the fact that the Paradox got banned by DMS, isn't part of the equation at all. And there's also more conditions on buff enjoyers, I feel like, to take this map. Buff enjoyers, this is a mid-game focused team. They need to basically have the game done by about 15 to 20 minutes. If they don't have it wrapped up by then, DMS will outscale them and will win the game, as far as I'm concerned right now.
So I'm always hit or miss on that, to be honest. I feel like if you take two teams who are equally matched in skill, comp does play a massive factor, and especially how the game like ends. But I feel like, I don't know, I think I'm being a little bit biased, honestly, but I feel like buff enjoyers are going to be the better team, that they could kind of run any comp against basically any team and still win, because they're going to have such a strong mid game, and they're going to have such strong mechanics when it comes to objectives and how they take them, how they pull teams in one direction and push somewhere else, especially having a Mirage here. I'm not saying like the comps are going to matter, but I'm really curious to see how like buff enjoyers, if they can snowball early enough against DMS to not let the DMS comp matter.
Well, I like the storyline ZP has given us, also because in the previous game, I feel like coming out of the draft, his predictions did kind of come true, and now the comp affected that draft. And ZP, any quick final words? You've got like 10 seconds, go.
I can't wait to see the mid-game fights. They're going to be super impactful, and it's going to tell who's going to take it all. I think if you're a fan of buff enjoyers, they need to get up, I think, 20 to 25k by mid-game. If they do that, they're good.
Nice. Okay, well, we say goodbye to ZP. He delivered in 10 seconds, Jason, as we go into the game.
And for all you fans out there, ZP, 56 subs left to go before he does wax his mustache live on air in the next broadcast for Deadlock Fight Night number 6. So get your subs in there. Everything you guys do does, of course, go right back into the show. But about to kick things off here between these two teams. And I mean, it's DMS trying to hold on to their position longer than Puljulius Scumbria did with only 1 week. And buff enjoyers looking to claim the title back. It's a perfect matchup here.
Yeah, super excited for this. It's going to be so interesting. I love that DMS are starting off with what I think we all kind of came off feeling like this is definitely a nice, very nicely rounded comp. I am curious about the Warden. I'm really curious about the Warden, whether it's definitely not a comfort pick. We'll be interested to see how they show us the value of Warden, especially given some of the changes that have made him less valuable. But just to quickly go over our lanes, we have the Infernus Yamato on lane 1, very common matchup that we see, and Mirage is against 7, and we saw in the previous game 7 doing very, very well against Listic on the Abrams in the early game. I'm not sure he'd have quite so much success here against the Mirage.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's actually, yeah, so Wolfie here with the 7 up against KLS on the Mirage. And it's Listic going to be on the Great Town. That's so weird. I'm sorry to change the subject, but like Listic, his hero pool is like, let me get in your face. Like, I'm Abrams. I want to be the one to engage. I want to be the one to take damage. But now he has to completely mentally swap how he actually plays these fights out by being more passive. I feel like that's such a different style that I'm really curious to see if Listic as a player can do that. Because to me, that shows he's an exceptionally good player and definitely someone to keep an eye on when it comes to months from now.
Yeah, and I'm going to be really interested to see also, speaking to players, in seeing how Michaelis performs on the Mirage. Mirage has been my go-to pick for ranked because I feel like he's so good at pretty much every stage of the game, at least in ranked. And as soon as that ult comes online and you can kind of TP gank, it feels like you can have a lot of presence, obviously, on the map, and you can control those lanes where you're having trouble. You can set up a lot of stuff with your teammates. So Michaelis being such a skilled and experienced player. But hold that thought, we do have a potential gank here onto Michaelis as we get the pressure coming in from Saf on that Abrams. And okay, well, it was all a distraction for us because it's Playwithme getting the opening kill onto Demov on the Warden, it seems, on lane 2 instead.
I think that's the roughest lane for buff enjoyers. Oh, that movement tech so sick out of Playwithme, but the fact that you really can't poke too much with the Warden. I mean, Viscus can poke a bit, yeah, but you take so much poke. As we do see Infernus Zergy gonna go down up against Psycho, and I talked about Psycho before. Such an insanely good Yamato player, definitely one of the best when it comes to EU, and that's not what you want to see for buff enjoyers. Already 2 deaths early on.
I do feel like buff enjoyers, that lane 3 that they have with Talon and Ivy against Kelvin and Abrams, I feel like it's a really nice lane. I don't know that you can really do much against like the Kudzu bombs and the power shots and stuff coming in from the Talon is pretty oppressive. So they have that going for them at the very least. Speaking of which, looks like we might have somewhat of a skirmish towards lane 3 potentially, as we do get a potential gank coming across, but again, maybe not. Listic was trying to do it, but it looks like the positioning's not going to work out.
Not going to work out, but he'll get back to lane in time to not really miss out on anything. I do like when we see teams like shove a lane like this, then get back before they lose any of the troopers, which is going to give them a ton of souls. We did see last week, I think it was Playwithme, who was rotating constantly between lanes. It might not have actually been him. It was a Mirage player who rotated between lanes constantly and kind of like soaked souls in both lanes to really get ahead. And that was really interesting to see. I'm curious if he's going to do something similar.
Yeah, one thing to mention as well is the timing of that kind of push coming in from Listic potentially to that lane 2. He's picking up all of the golden statues as well, getting them like right off the rip when they respawn. I think it's when they spawn at like 3 minutes, and I assume he's probably going to be timing those. I'll see if I can like keep track of that. I'll probably forget, but 2% extra damage, all that stuff adds up. But speaking of which, another attack coming in here. Well, looks like this skirmish is not going to find any conclusion. 3v2 in favor of buff enjoyers, with Listic once again being somewhat annoying on that Talon, but they're going to make their way across potentially now to the 7 on that 4th lane. So trying to be disruptive buff enjoyers now.
Yeah, we did see buff enjoyers get a kill onto lane 2. That was because we had Sharik and Demov realize that Playwithme isn't here, so they just completely pushed down Prestis, who doesn't have ultimate yet. But Playwithme's on 4k souls. Like, he was on 3k a decent amount of time ago, so you're gonna have to really worry about him. The poke he's gonna do is gonna be nutty here, and I think that's why we're seeing him roam a little bit here, knowing he has the ultimate up, trying to guarantee some kills in some other lanes so they can start to snowball those lanes as well. But other than that, I mean, you can see that Zergy's been forced to rotate into lane 2 because of the presence of Playwithme so deep in lane 1.
And potential gank here coming through onto Wolfie. Able to hit the Guardian there to keep himself safe, so it's like, not too much will actually happen
lane 2
after
though.
all is said and done.
So coming at lane 2, we have 3 players from each side here. Looks like the Guardian will go down. And Furnace could try to back away, and Zergy and Co. looking like they might escape the telekinesis. I haven't seen it go out just yet, but Listic able to get one with the Owl. Again, that global presence. Demoff turns it around as well off the back of that stun, and a fantastic turnaround of Buff Enjoyers, who are looking very worse.
Yeah, it's and we get a skirmish here again on lane 3. So the fights continue. Again, not sure if too much will happen here. You know, against Abrams and Kelvin, they have a lot of survivability between the both of them. So nothing going there. But we will have Sharik revisiting that second lane and actually looking to cube forward, try to find the fight with his teammate. Keep Demoff alive for now. Demoff, oh, he's not going to be able to escape though. Sharik did everything that he possibly could to keep him alive, but that was a bit too much to ask. And DMS, you know, looking to equalize here. If we're taking stock of the Guardians, we've got one for either team at the current moment. And still early days, but of course, everybody's got those ults online at this point, as we are well in advance of those 3k souls.
Oh, Mystic looking for some damage here. And we get a decent amount down. I just want to point out as well, Sharik had a great cube onto Demoff there to stop the telekinesis, but there was just too much damage coming away, and Listic just getting so aggressive here where Charge completely ruined his day, and some good dodging by Saf so far. Newest addition to DMS. Definitely a pivotal point in their success last week, able to take home the title. But even, I mean, look where Playwithme is on the map, right? On lane 1. Like, he's consistently staying so deep because he's trying to gank. But what worries me, though, is he overcommitting to doing this and losing out around the map somewhere else? But I know he's a very good Wraith player, so I don't want to knock him just yet.
Michaelis trying to find the kill there onto Wolfie. Not able to do so, just very, very close. I mean, Mirage is very scary. The damage output can be pretty insane, especially if your tracking aim's good. You can just consistently connect with headshots once you get all of those items that empower it. But looks like we're going to fight on the roof, and that's in fact going to send Buff Enjoyers back a little bit. They were pretty deep on that Guardian, but they can't really challenge into that. So keeping the lane 4 Guardian alive for now, whilst Wolfie gets back onto lane. Quite a few players congregating there, but at the same time, lane 1 has some action as well, as we do have Psycho 13 biting off more than he can chew, perhaps. Going pretty deep there, and not finding all that much.
Thinking back to the Owl, the guided Owl in lane 4, I feel like Listic called for the back away after seeing where they were and seeing there's 2 players up there. We do see Pig unfortunately go down to Wolfie here, and of course Saf, but I feel like he just kind of fed information. We saw the chase and Michaelis looking for it. He just like quickly turned around 180. He's like, okay, I'm not going to bother with this one, even though the Owl did open up the potential for a kill. But in the other things, can we actually take stock of how many kills we've had and the ability points? That'd be really interesting to see between the 2 teams.
Yeah, so we can pull that one up. But in the meantime, Psycho 13 actually falling a little bit behind on the farm, just ever so slightly. Oh, hello. Abrams flying forward, Saf with a charge, and there's the melee under the Guardian. Is taking a lot of damage actually by that Guardian, getting meleeed and is in trouble. Able to fall off and away. The Jin's Mark not doing all that much damage, and there is the heal from Kelvin's grenade. So very scary moment for Michaelis, but good for now.
Yeah, if that Owl came a little bit earlier, that might have been a kill over on a Saf. The Frozen Shelter's going to come in and it's going to lock in Piggy, and he's going to be in a 1-on-3. He does get a nice parry off, but how is he realistically going to survive this? Well, he's not. That's going to be another kill coming in for DMS's side. Again, good use out of the ultimates, but they're still going to be chased here potentially, because we can still see Buff Enjoyers looking for a fight there towards the teleporter, as in the meantime, a fight even breaks out in lane 2.
Yeah, I was going to say, we didn't get to see the fight in lane 2, but it doesn't look like anything too much happened towards that. There's a disengage from DMS, so they get out of trouble, trying to take that Guardian down. And everyone is beginning to return to lanes. And once the dust is settled, we can take stock and minute away from the urn and bridge buff spawning, and it looks fairly even between the teams. But here are the kills, Jason, for you.
Okay, so just a 1 kill difference. Not too crazy. I think Playwithme is on about 2 at the moment, which is a good start for him. Again, very, very good Wraith player. And every time I've ever seen it played, it has massive impact. But we do see, it looks like Buff Enjoyer is trying to invade the jungle out of DMS. And well, if you're Michaelis, you got to be a little bit careful here. Buffs come up in about 30 seconds time, so you're really going to want to look for both teams to be healthy, have any last minute buy-ups you possibly can if they want to contest these buffs, which transition to urn could be a major play.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how the teams decide to play it. Again, that first urn is not really worth very much, so teams might consider avoiding the team fight and just trading an objective as an alternative. But we've got a lot of team fights breaking out across the map on lane 2 and lane 4 and 3. To see who's going to come out on top here. There is a fight for those bridge buffs, and great follow through from Zergy, able to take down Saf. So DMS losing out towards this lane 2 side at the moment, but there is reinforcements coming across the map. However, buff enjoyers are going to be falling back. The bird is getting sent out at the moment. See if the owl finds anything. It does not.
I'd find some farm. I might have used that once or twice. You know, the guy to L just to go farm a lane when I realized I kind of used it the wrong time. Ern's going to be picked up out of Mikhail S. And he's going to retreat back towards his team here as they look to set up towards this left-hand side to protect the turn-in. So now it's on DMS. Can they actually defend this? Are they willing to defend this, more importantly? Knowing that the concussive combustion's down for Zergy, knowing that last stand's down for Dimov, knowing that Listic just used the guided owl, that could be an easy opportunity for them to force an engagement. But I also find this interesting. They actually do hand off the urn back to Piggy, which they did in the last game too. It seems like they want the support player to kind of hold on to it, so they leave the people who can put out damage to be there to be able to do it. In the meantime, we do see a little bit of a gank coming here onto Listic, who's looking to survive, and nice little jump away does provide him the distance he needs, but it might not provide the survivability in the end.
Nice finish there.
Wait, what?
From Mystic.
What's happening?
Buff Enjoy is finding quite a few kills here on lane 4. I'll go into that in a second because we got the fight over the urn here on lane 1 at the same time. And the urn still in the hands of Buff Enjoyers, unable to deposit it just yet. It is not safe as the fighting continues. And right now it looks like Dimov is in a very, very compromised position, very deep. And he's going to need some assistance. In comes the bomb from Ivy, flying above. And perhaps more reinforcements will be on the way soon. Maybe Saf on the Abrams will be able to join the fight. This is quite a prolonged one. The urn is actually walking its way all the way back to the original spot. Again, these initial urns, it just seems very hard to actually deposit them. And both teams will end up essentially being in a position to disengage there. But Jason, I just wanted to mention that lane 4 push. I don't think that was the push that DMS expected, that Buff Enjoys would have 3+ players there to defend. I think they thought they could get away with that one.
Did they have 3 or 4 there to defend? I thought it was just Listic there who kind of like almost pulled off like a 1v3 because he gets 2 kills off of that one, then throws the owl out after.
Might be hallucinating. I'm going to trust you.
I mean, you're not wrong, because I did see, was it Playwithme there and Dimov, and they teleported over towards lane 1. The Dimov was in the back lines. And speaking of the teleporter, we can look over towards lane 1. Buffendor is potentially looking to catch out Happex here as they're looking to secure the urn turn-in. And as we can see right now, it would be the perfect time to go for it.
Just trying to get this urn is so annoying, but eventually it looks like it'll finally happen. Nice Q coming in just to keep the protection there for Piggy as he falls off to safety. And we got I've got to keep my eyes on Listic here. He's starting to get kind of an insane lead on the Souls for Buff Enjoyers on that Grey Talon. So we might actually get a really huge game potentially from a and now it seems like picked every game Grey Talon.
Yeah, they left him in lane 4 while they were trying to run the urn over towards lane 1, and he continued to farm away. What's really unfortunate was that he wasn't in like lane 3 to potentially push that Guardian down, because we don't have the first flex slot unlocked yet for Buff Enjoyers, which is obviously going to hurt them, especially when they're at 71k souls. So I'm expecting them to group up and look for a push, and with the powers you just pointed out from Listic being at 17k now, I mean, he's 3k ahead of Playwithme, who's the strongest guy on the enemy team. They might use that to their advantage, or they should be using that to their advantage at least.
Yeah, the power spike from Talon, the DPS, the burst damage from the power shot and everything else, it might actually be a huge problem. We'll have to see as we get another fight breaking out here now between lanes 1 and 2 in Buff Enjoyer's territory. As the pursuit comes in from DMS, they want to see if they can finish off these players. But Ivy Mirage there, but they're able to get out of the way, and Piggy with, using flight to escape is not going to be able to, they're not going to be able to do any damage to him. So they're going to be forced to disengage DMS. And at the meantime, we have a push once again on lane 4.
Looks like they're finally trying to make some presence here on lane 4, like you said. And we do see the guy out come through, gets the assist onto Saf. Demon's able to lock that one down as they look to counter push now onto lane 3. The Soul Exchange has gone in, trying to keep Prestis alive as long as he possibly can, but the Guardian's still there. They finally finish it off, which means they get their flex slot, but will they get away with their lives? As Pig is being chased back, and Listic still in enemy territory with his 18k souls, looking for some more kills here, but he's just gonna have to back away. There's no need to overcommit this, especially since lane 1's being pushed at the same time.
All right, so trying to escape and disengage from lane 1 here, but it's very hard to do against an Infernus. Playwithme is going to get burned slowly but surely. The dot is certainly doing a lot of damage, and you can see the heal coming in, keeping Zergy up, but it looks like it wasn't quite enough damage to finish off Playwithme. But no, there's the pursuit from Sharik, not allowing the escape to come to full fruition. In the meantime, we may have a chase here. Indeed, Psycho 13 able to escape. And again, oh my god, the damage from Listic, and also getting all those kills. I wonder how many kills with the ult has happened. It's been at least 2 so far. Obviously, you get bonus spirit power from getting kills off of the guided owls. So I'm kind of worried for DMS about that.
I'm also interested in the fact that Zergy went with Ethereal Shift. So is he expecting Playwithme to try to gank him, or are they trying to use Zergy to kind of split push a little bit more? Because you obviously have the Viscous there with the Q to prevent the telekinesis, but going with Ethereal Shift as well is a great way to cancel out on that one. Then obviously makes you has better use later on in the game, I should say, when we get to more of these team fights. But the next turn has been picked up here out of Saf, and it's going to be yet again another neutral turn in, except you can see Buff Enjoyers are also really in position to defend this. Well, I say that and I see Zergy, I see Listic, and of course I see Piggy over towards the right hand side of the map.
And so it's going to be, once again, somewhat of a difficult task to deposit this, and 4 players from Buff Enjoyers are in proximity to that deposit spot. So creates a strange dynamic, but at the same time, DMS do have some presence on lane 3 and 4, the farm, but unable to really put any pressure on those walkers just yet. So they don't, and they're not giving Buff Enjoyers much of a reason to move away from the deposit spot. So we might actually just end up getting a full-blown team fight here, Jason.
I feel like we saw this a lot out of DMS last week. I feel like they were really hesitant to go for fights. I mean, obviously they are down in souls, they're not in the driver's seat for this match, so I can kind of understand that. And I think there's a couple of really...
to hold you up for a second there, we had Psycho 13 try to push the lane 3 walker just to show presence, which did draw across a couple Buff Enjoyers players, and now there's a window where they're starting, DMS is starting to go for that earn deposit.
I mean, they're set up for it. I don't know if I would want to put on Abrams. Definitely a person you need to have that seismic slam to help facilitate the actual turn in. But again, they're being very respectful here. They're backing away, but they're not really gaining much around the map. I mean, they are keeping Buff Enjoyers honest, like you mentioned before, with Psycho pushing lane 3. We can see Prestis now pushing onto lane 4, and it's keeping 2 players back from Buff Enjoyers to prevent them from getting walkers for free. But it seems like both teams are just kind of content on just, all right, we'll just let the urn reset here. You can see that Saf has gone back to base as well. I don't know if they're actually going to pick it back up instead. And I think they're just going to look for a potential fight here. I mean, as we can see, like, the urn is such easy turn-in right now. Like, this would be the go time for them, and it might be it.
Yes, absolutely. And there is forward presence. Obviously, having Playwithme in that forward position can really allow them to know that they're safe to deposit this one, as we can also provide some delay if necessary. And indeed, in fact, able to isolate Demov. I assume an ult probably came in, able to burst down Demov, and the deposit happens as well. So DMS behind that kill from Playwithme, able to get the turn in. And Buff Enjoyers, with this pause, they're not really in a position to take a team fight now. They are outnumbered severely.
Oh, the worst time for a pause too, like right in the middle of a fight. Looks like Psycho is having some lag problems, and you can see on the minimap he is in deep. I believe he's on the KLS here in enemy territory, and he still has Zoltan online as well. So I mean, DMS, a good read into the positions out of Buff Enjoyers, a good commit as well. They got the kill onto Demov. I feel like they could probably catch up Piggy for what I'm seeing here on top of that, and potentially transition that into a walker, or potentially transition that into a mid boss if they're feeling confident enough for it.
Yeah, that would be really cool to see. Some teams have been very good at executing that, and if you have the right composition, there's a lot of options to do it with. And there is a frozen shelter online called Kelvin's Ultimate, which can actually be a great tool to secure the rejuve as it's dropping, if the other team is trying to dive last second. So there are definitely some tools that can be used. Playwithme's ult is not online anymore, of course, so that would also be another good disable, that or kind of crowd control type of ability that would be useful for that mid-boss challenge. So definitely doesn't feel super comfortable, but they also have seismic slam, so there's definitely options, I have to say.
I think we're going to end up talking this up about what they possibly could do here, what they could do there. Oh, we could see this team push this spot. But I almost guarantee that at the end of the day, what the pause comes off, it's just going to be both teams retreating. It's just going to be like, okay, we're just going to back away.
Yeah.
I honestly expect Piggy to probably die here, but I believe he's in the air, as you mentioned, so he probably will be safe. But this is also a perfect time to remind people that you can buy some merch here, some Deadlock Fight Night merch over at deadlockfightnight.com, and all the proceeds do, of course, go right back into the event to make sure we can host this every week for you guys, because we love to do this and hope you guys love it at home as well. And on top of that, we do have a sub button here on the Twitch channel. We finally unlocked it last week with your guys' help, with all the people watching the Deadlock Fight Night. And of course, you can also sub. And once we hit 100 subs, which we're getting there, ZP, I know you can hear me. You better not trim that mustache.
No,
your man
wax that bad
so
boy.
hard right now.
It's never happening.
I could have said eyebrows, to be fair.
By the way, Jason, just I know
I'm scared. Where are you going with this?
Conversation is really important, but the I have to say I didn't even we didn't mention the Storm Cloud ult as well from 7. There are actually, like, in terms of like ults to hold down a mid boss, they actually are pretty kitted for it compared to buff enjoyers who don't really have anything except maybe the concussive combustion that could be somewhat helpful. I mean, Demoff is dead, so your last stand is not going to be something that you could utilize there. If they really go for it, I feel like there's I think you're right. I think there's a chance to do that. Hey, you know what? ZP's here. What do you think?
Okay, we're actually tapping in here.
Yeah, why not?
During this pause? Yeah, okay. Fine. Why not? So give me the question again, as I was talking with production real quick.
So Jason was like, this could, in theory, be a great spot for a potential mid boss. He thinks that they may retreat, as is the sort of natural reaction after a pause like this. But I was just looking at the options. I'm like, hang on. I feel like DMS could kind of raw dog the ult if they wanted to, and Demoff could even be potentially up. And they have the ults to do it.
Yeah, I mean, especially because they're running the Amato, they could. Here's the problem, though. I think this is still early enough in the game that going from lane 1 all the way into mid-boss, like, look at their positioning on the map right now. Should they go directly to the mid-boss, by the time they get there, Demov is going to be back up in about 10 seconds. While Demov might not be able to join as the rejuve is coming down, it's still... It gets really, really messy because the aftermath of the fight is still going to be a 6v6. And I just think the timing doesn't 100% support it here. It's something you could try to do because of the Amato, but it carries a lot of risk. If that respawn timer was like 38 instead of 28, I think it's a stronger play. But it kind of goes into the entire thing where if you're going to lose people before 20 minutes, it is way better to lose people while most of the team is positioned in lane 1 or 4 than it is to lose one pickoff and have it be in like 2 or 3, especially near the middle, because the travel time alone really hurts your ability to make the mid-boss clean in those situations.
Okay, observers, calm down. Sporting off the 360s. On that note, I feel like ZP, and it's not to smack talk DMS at all or to downplay DMS at all, but I feel like they're not going to be a team to go for something as risky as a mid-boss right now, even if you have Psycho who can almost guarantee it for your team with the ultimate. I feel like this is something like buff enjoyers we would definitely see do if they were in this situation as a more likely possibility. But I feel like DMS are playing a little bit more scared, and I don't think they've... what's the word I'm looking for? The way I want to explain it. I don't feel like they're as confident to pull off that kind of play right now against a team of the caliber of buff enjoyers, personally.
Right, playing it a little bit less risky, a bit more safe. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that, Jason, just because I think the one team that has been, like, very aggressive with their shot calling is buff enjoyers. DMS, like, I wouldn't say they're a passive team in their shot calling, but it's more standard, right? We haven't seen them do ultra aggressive shot calling in the way that buff enjoyers are. So yeah, I definitely, for that reason alone, would not really expect a mid-boss here.
I mean, look at last week, and to be fair to DMS, right? Once they were playing against Poggia Scombria, they did notice that PS were grabbing the urn to look for a turn-in on the left-hand side of the map, and DMS's response was, okay, we know you have the urn. We're going to force you to fight us at mid-boss. The big difference in that situation compared to this one, obviously, is a massive soul difference back then. That was like 20 plus K when that happened. So I think DMS are very, very aware of doing plays like that, but I think it's too risky right now, and it looks like Psycho is back in the game here, so we might be kicking things back off. And ZP, I'm sorry we have to kick you out of this one, but you'll be up next for NA, don't worry.
Okay, so back into the action we go. That wasn't too bad of a pause. Nice, smooth camming from the observers. That's lovely. Now...
Oh, look at this. Both teams retreat back to the side of the map. Oh.
Yep. The reset comes in, and hey, you gotta... I respect it. I respect it. And so, just taking stock of where things are, it does feel like DMS overall, for me, from a macro point of view is ahead as a team, but I'm kind of scared of Listic, to be honest. Listic's been kind of crushing it on the Talon so far. And I think in any of these opening engagements where he's set up well for his abilities, that could be pretty devastating.
When you compare him at 23k and Zerg at 21 to their counterparts of Playwithme at 20k, and then you have Wolfie at 21k. So it's relatively equal for sure. I think there's a slight lead, obviously, for Buffington when it comes to the carries. But I think it's all going to come down to like where this next bit of contention is going to be and what do we have coming up soon. I mean, we do have buffs in a minute time. We do have another pause, of course, because now someone on Buff and Joyce has to be having some lag. No, I'm kidding. But I feel like it's going to come down to like, there's no point to fight right now. We can't really split push, but the objective, how can we set up for this and how can we make something happen off the back of that? Also important to note, as ZP did let us know in chat, that you can see Tesla bullets and Shadow Weave picked up for Playwithme. So he's really kind of invested into like farm speed with Tesla and then for the gank potential with Shadow Weave.
Okay, so it's interesting, especially with two pauses off, you know, one after the other. We can kind of get a very reset look at the map. Pretty even in terms of map control at the moment. Slight edge there to DMS. Now the question is, you know, where is the next point of engagement for these two teams? Obviously, some of the drivers of these team fights is the urns. That's something that moves teams and forces these bigger interactions. Most of these, well, all the tier 1 Guardians that are gone, now we just have the Walkers all up for both teams. So I'm wondering if we're going to start to see, you know, some split pushing, because the jungle is completely absorbed by both sides. There's almost nothing left on the map at this point, Jason. So at this point, I feel like either team is going to be kind of fiending for creating an engagement.
Well, we've also hit the point where the walkers are the weakest they're going to be as well, right? So that means that a split push could be extra effective right now. I mean, it's very, very susceptible to just one person pushing it down. We did see buffs picked up. Urn's going to be locked in as well here. It looks like Playwithme is already teleported over towards lane 4. As we can see, a little bit of a chase coming in. D-Mob looking for the 1v1 up against Wolfie. The teleporter is going to allow him to get away, and Wolfie survives. But he's also very low in HP. And what? D-Mob actually just turned... Wait, what happened? Wolfie didn't even get out? I thought he did.
I thought he got out too. I'm so confused. But hey, apparently he died. That's what the game says, at least. Biggie taking down Psycho 13 as well. So DMS in a little trouble, it seems, losing 2 players. And they're going to pick up the urn. But the Walker is going to go down surely on lane 1, indeed. Walker falls on lane 1. Staff guess they're a little bit too late to defend that one. Mid boss is happening at the same time. Playwithme is going to try to get something back for DMS by taking out potentially the 4th lane Walker. But Mikhail S is going to teleport to deny the Walker takedown from Playwithme. So denying any trade of value here. And it's just straight up L's after L's for DMS in the last 2 minutes.
Get the urn turn in. You got to run it, Prestis. You got to get there as quick as you possibly can. Because he's Zergy looking to contest it. You do have Abrams, though, played by Saf, looking to lock down this location as Rejuvenator will be secured for Buff Enjoyers as they quickly push out of mid-boss to contest the turn-in on top of that. Buff Enjoyers letting nothing go here. Also, as a point out, Michaelis, another ethereal shift. That's 2 we've seen on Buff Enjoyers' side to really mitigate this telekinesis that Playwithme is honestly struggling to get a good ult off.
Saf going to try to trade at least the Walker on lane 4. Michaelis is on the way. Playwithme might try to intercept that as well in the lane 2 and lane 3 and lane 4 drama. But over here on lane 2, they are pushing hard for this Walker. Our DMS, or rather, sorry, our Buff Enjoyers and DMS trying to defend against this Rejuve. And they're actually doing a great job. They are actually forcing Buff Enjoyers to disengage. And at the same time, Buff Enjoyers respected the push on lane 4. They will deny it, but it had just enough power behind it.
They left. They left.
They're going back in here, Jason.
They thought they ran away. Yeah, they left. Buff Enjoyers immediately turn and immediately go for that Walker to get the the second of the game locked down here. Another flex slot going to be opened up. The urn's still going to be in the hands of Saf, though, as he's back towards his base. And now it looks like Buff Enjoyers might look to barrel down onto lane 3.
And that's such an interesting little macro choice there. The disengage, and DMS rotated instantly. They didn't even sort of entertain that it could be a doubling back, which is the thing, as we saw. And so now a really big advantage here for Buff Enjoyers. With 2 Walkers in advantage. Still have the Rejuve up, still lots of map control. and they're going to likely try to ferry this Spirit Urn across, but DMS might want to try to fight for this.
Oh, it's going to be tough, though. I mean, luckily for them, there is no Demov here. There is no Listic here. Listic does have his owl, though, so he could apply some presence. And yet, it looks like DMS are going to respect this still and back away. I mean, you can see Zergi's gone back to go farm some jungle on top of this, so they're going to not go for the contest on Urn. He's going to allow him to continue to push out some lanes here. They're trying to go for a catch. I believe that's onto Piggy, but Piggy is surprisingly tanky, and he's buying a lot of time here. Stoneform comes in. No one's going to come for his help, though, and I would imagine he's going to fall from the sword. Actually, Saf's just going to back away. Not going to bother going for it.
Very nice by Piggy. And also, we've got an unpick-up from DMS. I would assume that Rejuve should be going down somewhat soon. It's been up for quite some time. There will be another attack onto this, number 3 Walker. So more Walkers to be potentially taken here. DMS is going to be able to defend. If they can defend this successfully, they'll be able to get the Urn off the back of it, and maybe Walkers too. So if they can win a fight here, that would be massive. The question is, will Buff Enjoyers overcommit to this engagement?
Demov.
They try to fight, but they're forced to back away.
Demov coming in with last stand. He's looking for a bunch of damage, and they're all grouped up as well. Demov could absolutely shred them if he gets himself in the right position. The Storm God comes in, as you mentioned before, and DMS do get the 2 initial kills, taking down the carries with Listic and Zergi now out. Can DMS close out the rest of this fight? Even Sharik getting extremely low, looking to puddle punch himself away. Saf takes him down. There's nowhere to push for MikaelS, and DMS against the Rejuvenator, which eventually did fall off, do defend, taking down 3 eliminations for themselves. But Dan, get that Urn across the map, son. Go turn that in.
Yeah, I think, and it's crazy because those 3 players died, I think, just before the Rejuve would wear off. So they have a pretty fast respawn. So they're already back up, and I think they can probably use the speed on the zip line to get to that Urn deposit. So this Urn is not. It's just going to be floating around again. It's not able to be deposited by either team just yet.
Has any been turned in this game with the pause? I completely forgot if we had any pre-pause.
One, I think
it was Saf, right? Yeah,
we saw one. Yeah.
Man,
that's
DMS. This has been the lowest Urn game I've seen in ever for Deadlock Fight Night outside of my own matches, man. It's kind of crazy, but again, you're kind of seeing the pressure on these teams. I feel like Buff and George trying to redeem themselves with an unexpected loss, I think, in their eyes against Pulgilius Scumbria. And then, of course, DMS, they're like, we just got here. We just won $1,000. We would have won another 1,000 on top of that and be here for week 6. They definitely don't want to make any mistakes. Speaking of that, MikaelS, Ethereal Shift, I'm not sure if it was on cooldown or what, but he's going to be picked off, and that really allows DMS to go for the push here.
Indeed, and you know, one thing that we have to draw our attention to, mid boss is 130 away. So if a team fight does happen in the next minute or so, that could be potentially rolled into a mid boss if the wipe is too great for one side or the other. So both teams have to be somewhat aware of that in their risk calculations, as the Urn is going to go for free here for sorry, what am I saying? For some reason I thought DMS had it, but as the Urn is still being ferried now, this time by Demov, across. Again, there's a lot of stake here, Jason, with the mid boss up in 1 minute.
I mean, pretty much the next big team fight could decide who wins this first map and goes up 1-0 in the series. Like, that's kind of where I think we're hovering at, and both teams are really respecting that knowledge of knowing that one fight can completely lose us the game. We do see MikaelS respawning back in. DMS, they're going to be sending Playwithme and Saf on the right-hand side in lane 4 to look for a push onto their first walker of the game. And we also have to keep in mind that since we're at such a high soul high amount of souls, flex spots are extremely important, as that telekinesis is not enough to take down Listic, who survives the burst, and potentially Buff and George might go for the chase.
Listic is somehow so tanky, and here comes the guided arrow. Is it going to find its way across? Hello. Going to connect to Saf at the very least, but is he able to get out of this teleport? Are they able to force him out? Oh, it's so close, and he's going down. The dot, of course, even if he would have TP'd across, is good enough to finish the job. So Ernest is actually being held right now by Prestis on the Geist, but still unable to deposit it. Very annoying for both teams, I think, this Urn at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
And still the Walker advantage, though, for Buff and Joy. So they're still ahead despite being slightly behind on the souls now.
It's the flex slot I'm really looking at. I was trying to say, but I honestly butchered it. 166k souls, and you only have one flex slot. Like, look how much money they have. 4.4k for Playwithme. Prestis had around 2.5. Like, there's a lot of souls being built up that you cannot actually spend. Ooh, okay. So ZP points out that Playwithme has Curse, which stops Ethereal Shift from being used, which is probably why MikaelS died earlier on, which is such a great counter pickup for Playwithme to allow him to 1v1 anyone now.
Nice. Man on the street ZP feeding us the data. All right, so ooh,
He's looking for the
Shadow
1v1 with
Weave.
the Curse Man.
Love to see the Shadow Weave here, especially in situations like this. You're looking for a way to get a pick. It's a good way to do it, but could backfire, it seems. Stealth is going to go back online for the moment, and Playwithme able to escape. So mid boss comes up, guided out in to prevent the Urn. That's going to force the Urn to get dropped as they continue to fight over this one.
See Stoneform going in, look for the stun. Last Stand coming in as well here. D-Mob looking for a ton of damage. You can see the damage just racking up left and right. Playwithme in the meantime is going to continue to push out lane 3 while the fight continues here for the Urn turn in. A great charge comes in, locks in D-Mob, and the rescue beam pulls him away, but he's down to about 200 HP. Yamato in right hot pursuit takes him down. DMS able to get 2 quick eliminations here. Ethereal Shift comes in for Zergy, still looking for that 1v1 against Wolfie, and he's eventually able to pick it up before he does get secured. And Playwithme during all this gets another walker down, finally unlocking that extra flex slot for DMS.
Simple.
Yeah, 3 players traded for either team. Urn is potentially able to be collected here. Buff enjoys looking like they're in a slightly better position to pick it up. Mikhail S trying to deal with Prestis at the moment, and they're both very low. Mikhail S is like 1 HP. And the card's going to get it done. Great connection there. As here comes the TP in to prevent the Urn from being connected. Beautiful stuff from Playwithme. Big plays coming through the Ethereal. Mode is going to be a saving Listic for just a moment before eventually the inevitable gets bursted down. And the Urn goes to DMS. What a conversion. And that is... I feel like we've been waiting for this moment for 15 minutes.
So well done by DMS there, considering that they got engaged on, again, Playwithme position really well. Comes into the fight delayed to help secure a lot of these eliminations. The mid boss has been started, but DMS, they're not feeling too confident with Piggy there, who could potentially pull off the steal. So just the presence of the gargoyle, I don't know what you call Ivy in game. I don't know what kind of creature that is, but that's enough to stall him away and prevent the mid boss and from this game from going bad to worse. It just makes me think of the TV show Gargoyles. I don't know if you ever saw that.
That was pretty epic, actually. All right, so going in for the mid boss, and this is crazy. DMS was so patient, and they look like they're in trouble a lot of different times here, Jason. But right now, they are taking a massive lead, and huge amounts of initiative will come off the back of the reach. But in comes the Steel Attender, Combustion in on top of it. Who's going to be able to get it? It is, of course, DMS. They're able to defend the Rejuvenator. There comes the Shelter to keep everybody happy and safe and all regenerated. And they're going to be able to finish off the rest of the players here from Buff Enjoyers who are trying to disengage, but they are fully routed. And off at the back of this, surely you're getting everything, maybe even the game.
And they're going for the Urn at the same time. They get another flex slot unlocked where they were limited at 1 before. I would imagine they should be able to pick up a Shrine with so much time left on Buff Enjoyers before they respawn back in. I mean, Listic, the Owl's going to come in, but the Owl's not going to amount to much. And speaking of the Owl, Listic's at 37k. You remember when he was extremely far ahead of players like Playwithme, who's now rocking a 7k lead up against him. So the Urn Turner will go in. The first Shrine's going to go down. The second one most likely should go down. And I believe they're going to transform the Patron, but I don't know if they're going to close out the game just yet.
Yeah, and I think it's a great call out. Playwithme has done exceptional work. We'll talk more about it in more detail, I'm sure, in a moment. But yeah, huge call out there. Great performance from him so far, and it's going to be a massive advantage. They are respecting, though, that there's a way that they could lose the game, and they can lose the game by overcommitting. They have created a 45k soul difference, and they've taken down all of the objectives. They don't need to risk potentially dying as all of the Buff Enjoyers respawn over and fight them over at the pit. So I really respect this. No needs to throw it away.
I mean, we saw what happened last week with Deadlock dudes, and I believe that was DMS, and what could happen if you overcommit for the Shrines and such. But look how much money they have to spend. 7.5k on Saf. They're cleaning up all their jungle. They're getting all these Sinner sacrifices as well for those little bit of buffs to clean up all the boxes. Everything they possibly can to, I think, go into this last fight with every possible advantage to get them up 1-0 in the series. This is going to be so hard for Buff Enjoyers to come back from, especially with Playwithme lurking like this. The Shadow Weave, the Curse, he is looking to give his team that opportunity to look for that initial kill and the game.
Absolutely. And definitely seeing more late game strength, I think, in some of these big fights from the utility on offer from DMS. You know, obviously ignoring, before we go to this point, with the huge soul difference. Of course, all of the many items now these players have been able to collect. And this could be the final push. Still a little bit of rejuve left to make full use of. Not entirely sure how much exactly is left in terms of time on the rejuve. Can't be too much more.
See,
and in fact, as we disengage it.
This is where I was talking before about like buff enjoyers. You put them in this situation and they're going to close out the game. Like you're looking at a 40k lead. Buff enjoyers will win games with less than that. I think DMS are being respectful, but at the same time, I feel like DMS aren't as confident as a team like Buff Enjoyers would be in this situation. I mean, to be fair, right, DMS hasn't really been on the top of EU all that much. They only just came to the top this last week, where Buff Enjoyers have been seen to be the top team in EU basically since, you know, Deadlock finally got announced properly and people are allowed to talk about it. So I think DMS just being really reserved here, being respectful, being careful. But in the future for them, I want to see them be able to take a lead like this and close it out.
What's interesting now as well is we can benefit from the knowledge that they had about 20 seconds left of rejuve before they fell off to essentially farm the rest of the jungle and just clear everything out. And maybe there were some items that some of them were like, oh, I'll get a bit of a power spike if I can pick this up. And so that's what they decided to do. But I'm curious, is there any way back in for Buff Enjoyers? It's a 40k difference. It's definitely, I mean, we saw this last week with DMS actually being able to end up being in a position to win, that they were able to punish a team that overcommitted on the base. But that team had actually already caught up by like 40-50k souls at one point. So it is possible.
So to come back, don't let Playwithme get a free kill. You have to prevent him from getting a free kill with his cursed Shadow Weave. And that's gonna be very difficult to do considering you don't know where he's gonna be around the map. From there, then you have to look to somehow outplay them when it comes to team fighting, which is exactly what Piggy said they've been working on since their loss against Portugalias Cambria, sorry, a few weeks ago. The knockdown's going to come in. Piggy's going to be in a very bad position here. And use the gargoyle, the last time of Demon to help buy him some time here, but the fight is going to be breaking off.
And Playwithme taking a lot of damage immediately, but I don't think they're able to burst him down. No, not. It's going to be the other way around. Piggy and Michaelis going down out of the fight very, very early on here, leaving Buff Enjoyers in a very weak position. It's snowballing out of control. Buff Enjoyers now just down to 2 players as they try to run for their lives, but there is nothing left to do at this point. This is. I mean, the respawns are like a minute each for 4 players. BMS, Wolfie calling the GG. Is that BM in this game? I don't know.
No. Buff Enjoyer said GG's as well before, so
okay.
Not a big deal here. That this should be the closeout for sure. There's nothing going to stop them. It's Listic and Sharik, and if they were somehow able to do it, it would be probably the greatest single-handed play I've ever seen in Deadlock, but that's going to be it. DMS, surprising. I think a lot of us out there taking on Buff Enjoyers here in this first map of the series.
Absolutely. Getting that 1-0 edge. This is a best of 3 here in this grand finals. DMS taking that lead, and you know what, ZP highlighted it in the drafts with the comp decisions. He felt like DMS had the edge, especially going into the late game, and it was pretty labored, I have to say, Jason. In the, I would say, like between the 15 to 30 minute mark, all of those earn dynamics, it made everything look very, very precarious for them, and they felt like they were behind. But once they won that first big earn fight, they never looked back from there. And before you respond, maybe this is a good time to bring ZP back in, so kind of getting back in here. All right, okay, cool. All right, Jason, now you can respond.
What I was gonna say was, I think kind of like ZP hit it on the head, especially when he was feeding us the information of the game, was that Buff Enjoyers, with the ethereal shifts they invested 3 very early on, right? It was Infernus, it was Great Talon, and it was Mirage. That was their time to make those items have insane value, which I think they had good value. But once Playwithme got Curse, it made it so he could 1v1 any single player on Buff Enjoyers, which gave him so much more presence and so much more map control that Buff Enjoyers had to respect it and couldn't afford to use any sort of split pushing because they knew they would lose that person.
Yeah, man, you take a look at what happened here. There's a few different storylines. I think the ones I want to cover, the Playwithme storyline and also the kind of the Warden storyline we set to begin with. For Playwithme, he planned to run a marathon here. First big item on Wraith goes Tesla Bullets. That is not an item to go if you... Wait, hello?
Can you guys hear ZP?
Hello?
I can hear ZP.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't hear
well, it's only Dan that can. Dan can't hear anything.
Wow, ZP, why would you say that about Dan? That's so rude.
Well, he can't hear you either, I don't think, if he can't hear me. Regardless, we'll trust Dan to get his tech in play. I will continue on with the point as the stats come up here, which is that Playwithme played the long game here, Jason. They went out of their way to go, okay, we're going to go Tesla bullets, which is not something you do if you think the game is going to end by 15 to 20 minutes. It's an item you go if you want to go more longer focused on farm and you think you can hit the later game power spikes. Went Shadow Weave second and had to run the obstacle course. Plain and simple, between Viscous on the other team, 3 ethereal shifts, stone form, and also Warden being able to go unstoppable, right? So Playwithme, there was a window about 20 minutes in the game where it was way better for buff enjoyers on all angles. But, you know, you think back what happened on the 15-minute earn, they give it up when they were up 10k, things get evened out, they go up to 10k again, but they were never quite able to get enough of a lead, Jason, off of their comp and item choices that were so painfully designed to be ahead and win the game at around 20 minutes. They just really couldn't cross the bar.
I think it's really a testament to DMS to just to hold on, right? Like to not let the game go crazy in the mid game where buff enjoyers kind of had the power spike from the items they did buy. And I think they deserve a lot of credit for that because that's not easy to do against a team like buff enjoyers.
So Jason, I went back to look at a replay because you mentioned it was a later fight. It was 24 minutes in, and you mentioned on Demov, you know, big last stand, hitting 4 people. It was actually 4 to 5 people that Demov was hitting there with the last stand. He actually got great value for not even going Majestic Leap and being a more of utility Warden build. The problem was that it was 24 minutes into the game, and it was past the point where hitting 4 people with last stand is actually going to do that much. It was not the most impactful ult the way it would be is if that happened in 14 minutes, and it's not Demov playing badly, it hit the point in the game where Warden, even if you have great positioning and great ult, is not going to be as impactful. So it just got rougher and rougher as the game went on in terms of the team comps they were running and what they had to rely on for scaling.
Well, it's an interesting start to this one. I think, like Jason said, some surprises, DMS really holding on to that lead. However, I feel like if there is more of a comp edge for buff enjoyers, we could see a very different game based on how they like to take the initiative. It seems somewhat clear, at least to me, that they struggled to find ways to take the initiative with their comp. Is that a fair assessment of some of that awkwardness in the mid game where neither team was really finding those engagements?
So I think in terms of engagements that buff enjoyers is going there, yeah, I mean, I think it's not so much they had trouble taking engagements, they had trouble getting decisive engagements. They could never put it away. They were getting pickoffs here and there. They were making Playwithme's life absolute hell with all the ethereal shifts. And they had great team fight presence, again, up until about the 20-minute mark when characters like Warden start to fall off more and characters like Viscous start to fall off more. I would say, if anything, to draw a boxing analogy, it was kind of a rope-a-dope game from DMS until eventually they hit a point in the game where buff enjoyers really couldn't win a straight-up team fight anymore, and you had items, you know, as mentioned, like Curse, that negated 9k worth of items on the other team. So, yeah, I just think buff enjoyers struggled to get that one decisive team fight that they really needed, and probably the biggest thing that went against them was losing, I believe it was the 15-minute earn that evened up the score was really, really bad. Because if they get that earn, they probably end up 30k. And if you're up 30k, very, very different game in the late game.
Definitely. And I know we didn't get a look at the score screen just yet, but are we kind of feeling out any kind of early picks for our MVP of this series? You know, obviously we have potentially 2 more maps to go to, but play with me.
I mean, the thing is, I feel like Playwithme never would have gotten to that point if, again, his team didn't allow him to get to that point, that stall long enough, let him get enough farm. And that's what I said before about his Haze play we saw last week. I feel like the team plays really well around Playwithme, and I feel like that's kind of one of the strengths because he's been able to do some insane carries, EP.
Playwithme is quickly becoming one of the star players in the European Deadlock scene. Just you can't put up great performances like this night after night, whether it be in this event or others, and not eventually have people take notes and go, okay, this Playwithme guy actually very, very good at the game. How do you neutralize them? And look, to buff enjoyers' credit, they built their items and their team around not losing to Wraith, and then still lose to Wraith at the very end because Curse kind of removes a lot of your counterplay.
All right, well, with that said, it's time to toss things to a break. We'll see if DMS can continue in such fashion after this. So very curious to see how the draft will go, and maybe because maybe they'll isolate, just like you're already saying with the Wraith. Okay, get rid of the Wraith. I'm sure we will surely see that. And then also what the other things they're going to prioritize, you're about to find out.
I mean,
Now I'm just trying
DMS Paradox
Go
ban,
ahead.
I'm assuming, right? It's got to be probably a Paradox ban again, just to keep that away from Michaelis, who's just so prolific at it. But this might be exactly what you were looking for, ZP. Maybe Buff and Joyers will decide to take away the Wraith as well.
Well, you'd think also, if this is accurate and it's DMS doing first ban, first pick, that means Buff and Joyers deferred, and they would rather have second. So that means they can't do the other thing I was thinking of, where you ban something other than Wraith and then you simply pick the Wraith first. I
feel like production. I feel like you just made production be like, did we do this the right way by saying that? Like, actually deferring, because we haven't seen a team do that, as far as I know, to actually like give away the first ban opportunity.
Well, in this case, I think they did defer, and proof of that is the fact that Wraith got banned from Buff and Joyers, and there's no in-between play where they could have banned something else and then picked the Wraith instead. So DMS, Playwithme will be on a different hero this time. We know that much for sure.
Okay, production confirms all sides are correct.
Okay, so Prestis probably going to be on the Great Talon, which we saw DMS have quite a big success last week, considering they won 2-0 against Pogiliah Scumbria. For Buff and Joyer's side, though, do you pick like Infernus to take it away early, to take away any sort of hype care? Do you go for Mirage? Because you have 2 picks, right? Why not go with like Infernus and Mirage, and then you're taking away like 2 of the strongest picks that we could potentially see?
I think they go Mirage. 100% they go Mirage. They've highly overvalued, well, I don't know if overvalue is the right thing, but they value Mirage highly. Maybe perhaps too highly, but based on their draft history, and also based on kind of draft history in EU, I would expect Mirage. And yeah, Mirage is going to be who they pick. And I think it comes down to the fact that when Buff and Joyers has you on the ropes in terms of them dictating the flow of the game in macro, they don't want to have to deal with a Mirage on the other side that can really mess with your judgments on whether or not you're getting into a proper, 3-on-2 advantage or whatever it may be, because Mirage continually can shift the odds with his Traveler. He can go wherever he wants. So you have to account for Mirage when you're doing map rotations, and I think for Buff and Joyers, they would rather have that power on their side, and same with much of EU. I mean, Mirage is usually in the first pick, first ban territory, and Pocket getting valued early here, Dan.
Yes, which is nice for us actually, because it's good to see Pocket back in the mix. Pocket, despite getting a lot of nerfs, is still a really, really powerful hero for multiple of reasons, just the mobility, the affliction. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how it factors into the rest of the picks that we'll see coming up here. The big question for me actually off of Buff and Joyers getting Pocket is are we going to see DMS getting the Infernus? What is the carry that we're going to see for DMS, and where are they going to play with me? Viscus coming through, I think that respects, I think that, what you guys have been talking about with how there should be a pretty fast route to your Viscus in your draft.
Do we see Hayes again for Playwithme? Because he played Hayes last week, and I'm wondering if that's the avenue they want to go. I mean, Wolfie on DMS's side, if we ignore the fact to Playwithme and the Hayes play, his Pocket play in that series against Pogiliah Scumbria as well was phenomenal. There was one play in particular where PS were knocking on their front door at the base, and he comes out through the zip line with a 4-5-man affliction, and that really helped turn the tides for DMS. So, I mean, it's not a bad pickup for Buff and Joyers, but the Abrams pickup out of DMS, man, I'm always sad to not see Listic playing Abrams, but you know what? Sop did a pretty good job of it.
Yeah, I also think Ivy, well, you'd think Ivy's coming out for Buff and Joyers. Okay, this is the other option. They don't pick Ivy because they don't think DMS will value it as highly, which I think may be true. Because normally against other teams, Buff and Joyers will pick Ivy as early as number 2. In this case, they decide to go for Geist, something that DMS has shown they will pick very regularly if given the opportunity at around the spot. So in terms of knowing the other team, they go, okay, we can leave Ivy. Now I think they see DMS pick the 7. I think the Ivy gets secured by Buff and Joyers now, just to be safe and make sure that they have the support option that they usually like the most.
Can I bring up a question actually for you, Dan?
Yes.
Have you noticed we haven't seen Shiv today at all?
That is a good point. Yeah, that's a great point.
I mean, he got hit with some
obviously
slight nerfs, but he was still playing last week.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It didn't seem like the nerfs did, because normally the reaction is instant, just everyone goes away from something that gets nerfed heavily, but it doesn't really seem to be the case with Shiv. I wonder if it's due to the Grey Talon also coming into play more frequently as well, because just when you have burst spirit damage, I feel like that makes Shiv's ability to stay alive, it's much better against more sustained damage. So I think, burst damage characters tend to be pretty nice against that, but that's just a theory that I'm throwing out on the spot.
also think Shiv kind of had a little bit of a cooldown effect where people still were thinking he was still playable after the nerfs, and I do think his stock, even if you look at like what people are playing in ranked right now, has really started to decline a bit. And people, because you always have that dynamic when a character is really good and people play it and main it a lot, and then eventually it gets nerfed. Well, you've played that character for a lot, you can still kind of carry on your own personal skill, but eventually you start losing games and you're like, well, is it really worth it? And I kind of feel like Shiv has sort of hit that zone where people are wondering, nah, it might not be worth it. But the Ivy comes in for buff enjoyers, not too surprised.
On a last note about Shiv, he actually, EU is the only region where we've seen a decline in his play at the top level.
Yeah.
5% less. NA played it more at 1.1%. Asia's played it 10% more. So
I'm going to play more.
Yeah, really interested to see. Maybe we'll see Shiv in the NA matches, but as you said, Ivy being picked up by buff enjoyers, so they're locking that one in to counter up the Kelvin. Not counter, but obviously support versus support. It comes down to these last picks, and there it is. So we are going to see Playwithme actually on Haze, and the difficulty of this pick is that he needs to be able to come into fights later on when a lot of abilities have been used or a lot of things that could focus him down get used. So the rest of DMS have to survive long enough and be able to play around that to make him effective.
Now, I wonder for the final pick here, if we end up seeing a McGinnis come in for buff enjoyers, it wouldn't shock me too much as a final pick. I mean, usually teams in the situation may go, okay, we need another support, but it also, you could, in theory, when he was a little bit more highly valued, teams could put a ward in there. I don't know if buff enjoyers is really going to go down the warden path again after last game.
Flash, maybe?
Oh, they are going to go down the warden path. Okay, so they still say we have high faith in it, and I do think their late game looks a little bit better this time around. Also, now they have the Geist, they have the Mirage, they have Infernus. I don't think, even if this one goes late, I don't think it's quite as ugly as I think the last game sort of worked out to be when they gave up the Wraith to DMS. I just do not think Haze is quite as scary as Wraith is right now, but it's still, I don't think is like super great for them if it goes late either.
It is interesting that we aren't seeing Lash. Like you mentioned, Jason, just throwing the Lash out there. We have not seen him today, at least in Europe. I'm certain we'll see him in North America, but it's kind of sus. I'm curious, because it's always, when you're making any kind of a pick, it's an opportunity cost calculation. You're saying, okay, if I pick this, what am I giving up? And so I'm curious because obviously Lash has insane impact on getting kills for the team, like getting those death slams or pursuing a team that's disengaging, catch. There's so many ways to catch people with Lash that in these team-oriented scenarios where there's lots of coordination, it can be very hard to find picks, and Lash is a really great solution for that, and is a great solution for when the 3K Souls comes online and you want to have someone that's really active to help dictate some of those early ganks. Like Lash has so much utility. It is shocking not to see him here in Europe.
And we did see Zanya last week playing him against Prestis on the Great Town, and his whole role in those fights seemed like push out Prestis, push out this Great Town the best you can, which he was able to do quite successfully. So I mean, we'll see how it's going to work out. I'm curious, ZP, though, I'm going to ask you the question. Are we going to see a change up in Warden's build this time? You think we're going to see Majestic Leap to get into the backline against the Great Talon? Or do you think he's going to go for that still utility kind of role?
I mean, I would guess usually playstyles don't change that much between map to map within a given day in series, so I would expect it to be more the support Warden we saw with the early focus on to slowing Hex, early focus on the decay. I mean, even by Warden standards, you think about like how Hydration has built it historically with early Quicksilver in lane phase, into Leap, into Surge of Power. Quicksilver Reload didn't come into play for D-Mob's Warden until very, very late in the game, so even gun damage and the ability to pressure with Warden's gun took a back seat to just getting more support-oriented gameplay out of their Warden. And look, it can be pretty darn effective, but it is something that does mean it's more likely your Warden will get behind as the game goes on, and it makes the 10 and 15-minute earn in particular of really, really high importance if you're going to play Warden.
All right, well, ZP, I'll maybe hand it back to you here. Do you have any final thoughts on what are the most important win conditions here? How can DMS take this over the line? What do they have to do based on the comps?
I think what DMS has to do based on the comps here is still find a way to drag out the game a little bit longer, give time for Playwithme's Haze to come online, because unlike Wraith, where you have to build against Wraith to sort of limit her mid-game potential, if you're up against a Haze, well, she just comes online later, pure and simple.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that, ZP. We are going now into the grand finals. This is map 2 for Deadlock Fight Night number 5. DMS trying to defend their first title against Buff Enjoyers, who have enjoyed many a title. We'll have to see how this is going to shape up here, Jason.
Can we quickly go over to Warden, actually? Is it Sharik on Warden or is it Demov on Warden again? Because that's going to be one of the initial questions I have. Because as ZP said, right, you're not going to expect too many difference in terms of play style or itemization when you see someone play the same hero multiple times. So it's going to be Sharik this time. So maybe Sharik will go the Majestic Leap route. I'm not sure if he'll go the utility route. Obviously going to find out. We'll keep our attention on that as the game progresses. So that's kind of like the up or downside of having such a small amount of heroes in the game, that you can obviously rotate who plays what. But play with me on the Haze, man. This is, again, if he gets to that point and you guys missed out last week or you didn't see the recap that we put together for you, you're going to see a thing of beauty if he can get to that point, and how Haze can still be really useful in these high-level plays. It's not necessarily so easy to counter her, depending on how the playstyle works out. But a quick little pause coming through. Wolfie going to be on the 7. Is going to disconnect really fast. And then look at the rest of the lineup here. Is there any other like changes you want to mention necessarily, or anything in particular you're looking towards? Because I mean, we see Listic on the Geist and Demov on the pocket this time.
Yeah, I think I do think that focus on Play With Me is pretty a pretty good call out, and I'm going to add into that story that we've seen Haze come out a lot, and Haze has had, I feel like, more underwhelming games at this level than Haze has had good games at this level. And I think it does have a lot to do with what ZP was highlighting. Just the nature of Haze takes a little while to come online, and walking that balance between farming and being useful to your team in the key moments is very, very hard with Haze, because you can't really afford to give up farm to power spike at the right time. So it's a very tricky balance. Play With Me is the one player I think that I've seen consistently do it. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to putting that spotlight on Play With Me once again in this game to see if that impact is there once more.
I mean, Haze does have one of the worst win rates when it comes to Deadlock Fight Night. 3 wins, 5 losses, so not 37.5% win rate, which is definitely down there. Unfortunately, Warden, actually, funny enough, has a worse at 23% win rate for us here at Deadlock Fight Night. But also, we'll see how this is going to play. I mean, I'm not really going to say the win rate is exclusive to how the result's going to go, especially with the caliber of players we have. But Wolfie able to reconnect back in and get the kill into Zergy. And this is not an easy lane for him to win necessarily up against the Infernus.
I was going to say, the solo 7s today have actually been immaculate. Like, doing very, very well on those lanes, typically winning them, regardless as to who they're up against. But Listic, in from the side, is going to be able to find that one with the grenade. So, very, very well done. Oh, nice little puddle punch there. I love a good puddle punch.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Viscus is one of the most annoying heroes in the game, I'd say. With the punch, like the fact that you can be moved from your position always pisses me off, and you always find that one Viscus in ranked who just can knock you 3-4 times in the air, and you're just like, all right, just kill me now. Like, why am I even playing this game? Play With Me looking for an early rotate though to lane 1. Just looking to have some impact here. Maybe a sleep dart could lead into something. Well, you can see it looks like Demov will back away again, kind of realizing that potential could come through. A sleep dart into a charge, like, you're almost going to die, especially when he doesn't have his briefcase.
It does feel like the Pocket Infernus combo could be pretty scary later on in some of these team fights. So much damage over time. I mean, if the thing with Pocket is if you can connect an Affliction, let's say there's a big fight coming up, you can connect that kind of just right, like on like 2 or 3 heroes right before the fight starts. That's actually highly significant, and that's the kind of dynamic that would have really changed the previous game, where neither team could really find a way to kind of break the stalemate. It took a long time around those urn fights. So I feel like there's more options in this game for if we get into a similar scenario for how those teams can manage it.
Let me ask you a question about Pocket, because for me, I've always hit or miss with him when looking at him, because it's like, if the fight's over before your Affliction can really do any damage, Pocket becomes kind of low tier in my eyes. But as you're saying, like, if you can get an early Affliction off, and then your team can kind of push the fight off the back of that, or the fight gets dragged out, you really see that usefulness be amped up, especially if you do invest into the ult early, where you can deny any sort of healing from that too, or any like regen from that to really prevent any sort of like Kelvin heals to do anything, or McGinnis heals to do anything.
Yeah, and I think the thing about Pocket is that he has the tools to get in and get out. So if that's one reason why the Majestic Leap is so nice, because you get an item that gives you a tool to kind of get in, so you can kind of throw your cloak away and do your barrage, land on them, and then do the affliction, and then you just cloak out. So that, or if you get into trouble, you obviously have the satchel too. So there's so many ways to like potentially turn a high risk scenario to get the affliction off into something that has the risk mitigated like sufficiently that it's worth going for. And that's why Pocket, I think, is really interesting. But speaking of which, it is up against the Abrams here, and Playwithme on the Haze also has drawn his attention to this lane. Actually, he's been harassing between lane 1 and 2.
I wonder
now.
So he did this before on a Mirage last week. He's double dipping in lanes. He's at 4.1k souls, far above ahead of everyone else, and he's barely been in lane because he has his lane partner kind of like not push the lane until he's there. Then he joins his Abram, and Psycho will push the lane out there as well. So he's getting so ahead in souls that he could have such an earlier impact that normally a Haze wouldn't have until later on in the game.
Okay, this is cool tech. This is really cool tech. What a great highlight there.
And Dan, he's the only one that's done this so far that I've seen as well when it comes to Deadlock.
Yeah, this is actually really sick. Because you're right, look at it, the difference is tangible, and it's also like pretty safe, and also allows Haze to be sort of active in both lanes. So if a kill is to happen, Haze might be able to actually benefit from that. Obviously, unless the kill goes against the Haze. But
well, it's like if you're that solo laner, you never feel safe because the Haze is just bouncing between your lane. Well, it's Haze, it's a Wraith, whatever it might be. It constantly bounces between your lane, which makes it so much harder for you to ever like get that 1v1 you're looking for without that threat of potentially dying yourself.
It just takes that one sleep dagger to connect to you, and like let's say then the Abrams can walk up close to you, melee you, and then charge you. You're suddenly in just a devastating position. So you do really have to respect the Haze's gank potential there. You're totally right.
Well, once you hit the 8-minute mark, of course, that will stop. Just trying to get an early lead here, which he's still going to be holding over everyone else. Got to continue to farm up that jungle in the meantime as well. But a pretty slow game. Like no kills just yet. We're 1 kill each, but we're 6 minutes in. Both teams being very cautious about this. I'm kind of wondering where's the first little bit of action going to be coming as everyone's going to start to pick up their initial like tier 2 items. We can see the flame dash actually being taken by Zergy over his 3. I don't remember the name off the top of my head. So he's investing in the mobility a lot earlier on.
Indeed, nice to stay safe. That flame dash, and yeah, it seems like business as usual for most of these lanes.
So last week as well, we saw Lady Geist. I can't remember who played off the top of my head, but they leveled their 2 first, so they would get the silencing effect off of the 5 points, right? I wonder if we're going to see Listic do that to have utility in these fights to shut down like Playwithme or shut down Sap in particular, so you can't cube. There's a sleep dart into the charge we were talking about, and Demob forces the satchel and the cloak to get away.
Beautiful stuff. And that's it. And just that is a lot of damage that chunks Demob down to half, and it's Pocket. So it's like one of the heroes where you can kind of get out of pretty much any situation, throw the cloak, go into the satchel, and then TP out. But Mikhail maybe in some trouble here. Gets bounced up by the puddle punch. Just so irritating. A high-level Viscous player is just nothing to be... I mean, you've got to be very cautious. Mikhail able to put the pressure back on with the help of Kelvin, played by Happex. But yeah, this is looking pretty good right now for DMS off of the rip. Obviously, the souls are pretty close, but I think for me, Jason, it's a success of... Okay, hold that thought, because in comes Playwithme. I was about to mention the success of Playwithme, maybe even getting a kill early on, indeed, with the help of the Kelvin and the Viscous. And this is what we're talking about, an active Haze in the early game, helping to get kills and still farming everything.
This isn't good, Dan. I put all my channel points on buff enjoyers here, and they're starting to get wrecked in this game. I'm getting a little bit nervous. But yeah, I mean, making the Haze active early on, getting a lot of early kills. You got to be careful here, Shuri, because you don't want to get too much lower, or they got it out. Actually, it's on cooldown, so not too big of a deal. And this allows now Playwithme to like kind of have free farm over a lane and also have some impact, or on some, even further impact on some other lanes as they pick up 2 more kills. Demob and Piggy goes down.
Oh my god. Okay, great start so far for DMS. Again, we're really going to keep a close watch on Playwithme, the star carry of the team for sure. And had a great first game, so looking for that MVP screen. We get more pressure now coming in from buff enjoyers onto lane 3.
Gotta really respect this. a good charge coming through. You can see how low he drops as well. The soul change comes through, but it's not really going to matter too much. It's just too much damage there. And Saf and Happex both pick up a kill as well. That's 2 more coming through. And I mean, it's only a 3K solely, but it doesn't really reflect how this game's gone so far for DMS, as they're just looking to put the pressure across the map here. I would eventually expect them to pick up their first flex slot. They do have the ability to push these Guardians on quite quickly, especially with these kills coming through and the synergy they have between a lot of these ultimates.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like this, the scale of how quick the farm can be for Haze that gets a good start. It's definitely, you know, quite different when you get those items online quickly, because you got to think about it from the whole of that thought. We might have Playwithme getting in some trouble, but nice connection with the dagger. Might have been okay or anyway, but that just keeps it safe. Able to get the healing right online, and yeah, I was just going to mention, you know, Haze is going to be able to make better use of the jungle cams if you're able to get, obviously, your power spike a little bit earlier. So, but with that said, we got 3 players here from Buff Enjoyers around the bridge buff on the left side of the map, as it's going to be spawning. The Frozen Shadow is going to be used to try to just deny this one. And DMS in really great position, surrounding Listic on the Geist. I don't know that there's any way to escape this one. 3 players in hot pursuit, sliding down the stairs, and Listic will finally go down. I honestly don't know how Listic got that far, honestly.
Well, Playwithme's being ganked on lane 1. We can see the Prestis is going to be coming to rotate in to help out as well, and they will be able to defend this. So another kill going the way of DMS without any sort of retrieval from Buff Enjoyers, even the sleep dart being landed as well. I think what's so deadly about this comp is because Playwithme, why did they even get the kill onto him as well? How does that happen? How Demon Affliction has gone in, again, the satchel and the cloak to get away. But with Playwithme having 10k souls, he can almost be left to start split pushing here, where on Buff Enjoyer's side, I don't know who can really 1v1 him at least easily with the way this game's been going, which allows Psycho to leave the 1 lane to group in for team fights.
Well, the urn is up, which is going to be interesting now. There's a 10k lead this early for DMS, and they're going to be taking down the lane 1 Guardian. They can fall back onto the urn if they'd like to do that. And this is troublesome. Now, DMS also have Psycho 13 on the Abrams in a decent position on lane 2 as well. So we'll have to see how that's going to come into play, able to assist the rest of the team as they fall back. And they have that urn indeed. They're ferrying it across there, Jason.
Yeah, this is the worst part. Because they're 10k ahead, they have to go into enemy territory, which realistically you're not going to be able to turn in. And this is going to be another catch onto Listic, who eventually will fall. Maybe Psycho will fall as well. He's still looking for the chase on a Piggy. That's another 2 kills. And honestly, that might have been what they needed to put the urn in, but we can see it's still in the hands of Saf, who's gonna be sitting towards lane 2, and this lead, it might continue to grow. This is Buff Enjoyers need to figure out something, and they need to figure it out fast.
Well, for Buff Enjoyers, you know, ZP's notified us that for their Warden player on Sharik, he's building Slowing Hex and Healbane, so not going towards the Surge or the Leap, which is something we were speculating about previously.
Yeah, I don't think can really kind of even afford to invest into that with the way this game's gone. I mean, 10k lead 12 minutes in is really such a massive lead, and I think with what we're seeing out of Saf here and this urn that these kind of keep near him is just kind of, we're not necessarily going to look to turn it in, but because of the lead we have, we don't want to let you have it because it's on your side of the map where the turn-in's going to be. So it's more of a denial, I think, that they're picking up this urn and kind of holding it on their side of the map than more so looking to actually turn in.
And that is annoying. It's definitely quite annoying. I mean, DMS with full control, really, of this situation. And there is the Affliction play, getting that in early, and Psycho 13 having to fall off is going to be able to escape. So Affliction is gone, and the urn still needs to be collected. I wonder if there's any world in which it's even worth trying to do this. It's only 4,000 souls.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Like I said before, I think it's just to deny Buff Enjoyers from getting it. As we heard ZP mention, like the urn we saw at the 15-minute mark was a big turning point for DMS, and it's just more about denying it. Don't let the enemy team get it, because if they can get their hands on it, it's not that hard to run it into your own side of the map. And I mean, that 10k solely doesn't really amount to much when you have to turn it in at that location, when you can control so much more on Buff Enjoyer's side. So I think it's a smart play, honestly, out of DMS. I think it's a really good indicator of their understanding of like what they need to do right now to keep this lead and prevent Buff Enjoyers from getting back into the game.
Indeed. Now, Buff Enjoyers, you know, they only have 1 tier 1 tower down at this point. So there is definitely some souls to be recovered with regards to that. So the difference in the lead doesn't, it looks perhaps a little bit more stark than maybe it really is. And we've talked about this in a previous matchup where we're saying sort of, well, hold that thought. We've got another dagger coming in. This is surely going to be a connection. Here comes the last stand attempt. It is... It's all in vain. Oh dear. Getting caught like that is not what you want. I was about to say, Jason, that's all about trying to mitigate when you're behind, but they're getting further behind now.
Did you almost call me a ZP?
I almost did, and I'm sorry for that.
Just another American to you. I get it. No, yeah. Definitely a good point. And I feel like we're hitting that point in Souls as well as we're approaching like 80k, 70k for buff enjoyers that like you kind of really want that flex slot. And buff enjoyers still don't have it open, which again gives even extra power to DMS's side here. So I'm kind of curious, will DMS look to defend these Guardians to prevent them from going to buff enjoyers to get that flex slot? Because as we can see, like with the way the teams are positioned on the map, like DMS kind of have a lot of control here, and buff enjoyers are given a lot of ground out of respect to DMS because they don't want to have another fight happen.
I see Abrams.
Well, what's interesting is that, you know, Playwithme's farm, maybe you could say it slowed down a little bit, but to be honest, on the other hand, he's been so active in all of the fights. It's not really a conventional sort of what you would expect from a Haze. Yeah, he's getting some farm in, but it's almost secondary to making sure that you know, Playwithme is actually present in a lot of those engagements. You know, landing those sleep daggers, setting up those ganks, getting the extra DPS in, really being an active participant.
If I'm not mistaken as well, he has slow. He picked up a slowing hex, so he's definitely looking for like a chase. If anyone gets close to him, hit him with a slow or off the back of a sleep dart, and you should be able to lock this in. The affliction goes in, goes extremely deep. I think he caught out 3 players with it, but they're really not taking too much damage because the affliction doesn't do too much just yet. And that's going to be the first walker of the game going down for DMS's buff enjoyers. In the meantime, are pushing lane 4 for their own walker, so they will trade 1 for 1. But buff enjoyers still don't have a flex slot, and DMS is like, hey, mid boss is here. It's already extremely low, and I don't see buff enjoyers contesting this. They're immediately on the hot pursuit to get here as quick as possible, and it comes down to Piggy with a big stun to potentially go for the steal.
Oh, huge problem, and there is the frozen shelter to deny any possible steal. And there it goes, DMS collecting the rejuvenation, and they're going to be chasing down buff enjoyers who were trying to stop that, were trying to steal it potentially, but now they are having to retreat, and this is where kills can happen to DMS's benefit as they keep themselves pushing forwards into these walkers. And again, with the rejuvenation as well, they're going to be able to take some serious objective milestones here.
They have so much damage as well. Sharik with the last stand goes in. He's trying to be bursted down, but does manage to survive and fend off DMS from taking this walker. DMS have to be careful as well because the lane 4 is still pushing into their own base. And it looks like maybe Zergy was trying to set up for a catch here, trying to wrap around the back of them. But DMS is going to back away. They have a lot of souls to spend here, and they can come back even stronger. We're at the 16, almost 17-minute mark, Dan, and we still have yet to have 1 earned turn-in. But D-Mob, like, if you pick it up and just go run it, that's a free capture. Like, that's a lot of souls to get back into this game.
Yeah, and you know, it's so key that they were able to defend that number 3 walker, because of course that keeps the Suns safe to be run in this fashion. And on the other hand, DMS, they're going to push every single lane, which is really smart, especially at this time in the game where the walkers are not as resilient, as they get less resilient over time. You might be able to get every single walker off the rejuve here. In goes Zergy trying to do the damage there. Oh, Flame Dash not able to get out of dodge in time. And this is lane 1 walker going down. At the same time, lane 3 and 4 are all at risk. Lane 2 has been taken down as well. DMS cleaning up.
They got to be careful. They cannot afford to be caught here. And we can see 7 and Viscous looking to back away. Looks like they will create some distance. And Buffendorf's not able to capitalize off the back of this. So phenomenal job by DMS, attacking from many different fronts at the same time. They still have 1 walker to take down before they get their next flex slot. But look at this. Like, look at D-Mob. 0 flex slots. 17, almost 18 minutes in. They have 93 carry. He has 5,000 souls to spend, but has no flex slot to put it in. And he might get ganked here. He's for sure getting ganked. There's 3 players out of DMS to look for this kill.
Oh, frozen shelter just locking in. No escape.
Good night, Pocket.
Ooh, I mean, this looks very convincing, Jason.
Like, because Playwithme got so fed early on, Zergy went for an early metal skin, delaying his damage even further.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you can't afford to be doing that for buff enjoyers when you're already this far behind.
Early metal skin when you have no farm has been punished. That is brutal, Jason. I can't believe you just told me that.
I mean,
no.
It's a good counter to Playwithme, yes, but it delays your build, and it only lasts so long. Like, you still can die right after it. So it's really unfortunate they've been forced into this item build, but that's kind of what we saw last game, right? The ethereal shifts, we saw 3 of them come out to deal with the Wraith, and then eventually Playwithme got to the point where he could pick up Curse and stop the ethereal shifts from being used. But he's kind of like already worked around that just because of his early presence, early farm.
Yeah, and you can see a big difference on kills, but not so big on AP. 16 to 5 on the kills, 109 to 101 on the action points. So everything resets after the rejuve has worn off, and we are looking now for what the next objective might be.
Piggy on accident, all chatting 23 when the mid boss is going to respawn back in.
Yeah, 3.5 minutes away. The bridge buffs are coming up, though. That's something that teams are beginning to fight more on, over. North America, at least in particular, I've noticed that for sure. So another item note coming in from ZP. Man on the street, ZP, has informed us that Lucky Shot has been collected on Haze. So looking to focus on that damage first, as opposed to focusing on protecting your ults with Unstoppable.
And I think with the way he plays it as well, he doesn't necessarily need Unstoppable this early. Just kind of keep the pressure going. We do see Shriek with Majestic Leap, though, so a little bit of adaptation in terms of how he builds it versus how DMOB builds it. And she got to that point with Surge of Power. Looking at the rest here. I mean, Prestis, superior stamina. That's kind of expected as well. Rescue Beam out of Happex. I don't know, man. I'm finding it hard to really think that Buff Enjoyers can get back into this game. It's not that big of a difference in terms of souls, but DMS are just looking so confident. However, the snipe, the pickup out of Shariq, getting the urn, might be exactly what they need to get some souls on their side. But can he get away freely, or will they lose any of their base for this?
Yeah, it's such a good point. This could be a really important moment here, because you can see DMS, they are prioritizing this. They want to stop this from happening if they possibly can. I don't know that they can stop it, though. In comes a guided owl. What's it going to find? Just a bunch of boxes, it seems, as DMS and Buff Enjoyers begin to converge on the urn drop-off point, but they're not going to be able to stop it. There is a collection coming through, and now the gap is closing. It's actually 6k difference now, Jason. Negligible.
Huge. That was so smart out of Buff Enjoyers to just know when the urn was going to respawn and be there in time to pick it up and run it right away, knowing that the deficit they have in souls is enough to force it to be back on their side yet again. So like you said, it's 5k souls between the two teams now. It's just about Buff Enjoyers getting some items online and getting to the point where they can afford to fight against DMS and have more so the confidence to be able to fight against them. And also, more importantly, don't let Playwithme 1v1 any of your team.
Yeah, and we've got the Majestic Leap coming online here on a Warden as well. So getting itemized, and this game, it's crazy how one-sided it has felt. But you look at and take stock right now, and the only difference really is the objectives. So that if Buff Enjoyers can find a way to win a team fight and roll it into some objectives, maybe some split pushes, they're going to be in good shape. And Saf should be able to escape here with the Google, indeed. Can't really do too much against that. And able to get some information. Finds 3 heroes on lane 1.
Push coming through. Little trap to lock down. Ballistic yet again here. He's just trying to survive, but unfortunately he wouldn't get the exchange off. And this might be exactly what DMS needed to finally make a play happen. Mid boss can be spawned in the next 40 seconds of time, and the respawn timers are about just that for Buff Enjoyers. Maybe look for that lane 3 walker so you can get your next flex slot unlocked here, and potentially look towards the base. I mean, you have the time to at least take one shrine.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good to get that pressure on. Buff Enjoyers are looking like they're able to make a recovery here. Again, if they can just still hold on to all the major base structures, they'll be all right. So just a fall back here from DMS. They don't have the rejuve, but it kind of looks like they do. If you look at all of the lanes, they are very gold at the moment.
I think they're setting up for an immediate mid boss here that respawns back in. Again, you still have to be careful of Piggy. The frozen shelter out of Happex was perfect last time to not allow Piggy to steal it, since he just landed on top of that. And boss going to be dropped on HP. Affliction comes out. I think it only catches like onto 1 realistically here. And there's the frozen shelter without the rejuvenator coming down.
Indeed, it's popped quite early here. Now the rejuvenator is going to fall. Nobody's dead just yet for either side. Is there anything left to try to steal this? Concussive combustion is popped. Here it comes. Is the steal going to happen here? And it will. Buff Enjoyers. Maybe not out of this just yet. The Storm Cloud coming in for the extra damage from Wolfie. That is going to wipe 4, or rather 5 of the 6 players for Buff Enjoyers. And Listic is not long for this world, but they stole the rejuve. Was it worth it, Jason?
I want to say almost yes, because if DMS get the rejuvenator there, I feel like you almost just lose the game and you lose the series up against DMS. They lose every single person, and they're going to lose the rejuvenator off the back of that, but they prevent DMS from having it, which I think is definitely going to be a big win for them in the long run. But again, a lot of souls still go in the way of DMS, but the fact they're able to take down every single player on Buff Enjoyers, and I'm curious what items will be coming in as well. Ricochet's been picked up here for Play With Me, getting extra tanky as well, investing into these green items. I mean, and not to mention Wolfie's at 32k farm. Like he's so far ahead of everyone on the other team at the moment. Not too far ahead of Play With Me though.
Indeed. Yeah, Play With Me, just incredible performance.
You know,
Previously a PUBG professional player, Chad has told us, which I did not know. Did you know that, Jason?
I'm gonna just say yes, just to look smart. But
nice.
But no, I didn't.
I was ready to accept it. I accepted your answer already.
I can't lie. I think that mid boss though was like super risky. I mean, the fact when you use the frozen shelter before you kill the mid boss, I feel like that should have been okay. We stop. We don't force the fight, and then we look for another opportunity to take it. And the thing is, they already did push it past the 60%, so I believe it's not going to yell again when we do see a team go for it. So it could have been a little bit sneaky. We can see Buff Enjoyers are looking to set up here for the right or the left-hand buff spawn. On the right side, it's going to be Psycho on the Abrams.
Yeah.
So at least Buff Enjoyers like realizing that's a big priority for us. And I mean, they are down quite a bit of souls. Will it be the 10% though? I can't do math that quickly.
I think they might be able to get it. Yeah, if they can get this on, Jason, I do believe it should be a friendly un. I am just guessing, though. We'll have to see. It's going to be tight. But if they can pick that up, and if that is the case, that's a real way back into the game as the fight now is taken to the urn spot. DMS will take it away from Buff Enjoyers, not allowing them to use that as a method back into the game. And that's a sad state of affairs for Buff Enjoyers. Indeed, it's a defensive, or rather an urn that's leaned towards Buff Enjoyers. So not sure if DMS actually want to try to capture that one, at least outside of winning a team fight, at least.
I don't think it's necessarily the worst case for them because, I mean, realistically, DMS are not going to run this in. And it buys time for Buff Enjoyers. And I feel like time is what they need right now because they're down 27,000 souls. They need time to farm up these lanes. They need time to not have any of these skirmishes happen. They're going to be looking for a walker here in lane 3 as we do see the Affliction coming out as well. And they will be able to pick it up. And that's going to be, well, Play With Me getting one, getting a second as well inside that frozen shelter with the last, or the dance, the blade dance. And that's going to be DMS picking up 3 kills off of this in total.
All right, well, those 3 kills, that might make the urn a doable scenario now if they go and collect that. 2 players will be down at least. MKLS with a fast respawn. Okay, interesting though. Listic is actually, he's in the enemy shop at the moment. Uh-oh. Where is Listic? Is he going to get discovered here? He's got us surrounded. I'm a little bit worried for Listic right now. Jason.
I think he's just trying to be as quiet as possible and be like, okay, there's no one here. I'm behind this
Get in
urn.
the urn.
You can't see me.
I see Kelvin.
Should be like Assassin's Creed. Should be able to jump in there.
I mean, if it was a different hero, I'd be like, okay, this is not bad because you're behind the team. But luckily, he does escape. 3 seconds off on Zergy for the respawn. Piggy's going to be back up as well. The bullet dance not up just yet for Play With Me. Or, yeah, not up just yet. A little spec bug there. And I mean, this is where DMS is going to slightly struggle because they have no objective to really play after. I think they did go for the urn turn, if I'm not mistaken. But they have nothing to really like force the fight for Buff Enjoyers other than them just hard engaging. So it's going to be tough, I think, for DMS to take this advantage they have right now and make a play off of it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of, what could be a team fight scenario that would be like an opening that would give Buff Enjoyers a way to get that early edge in the team fight. Because that's often the problem, when you are behind on souls, you're not as tanky as the other team. You can get bursted down pretty quickly. And if you lose a couple players very fast, suddenly the fight's just over because it just snowballs too quickly. So you need to do that to your opponents. And typically, there are definitely methods to do that. And if you've got burst spirit damage, if you have like a disable, let's say, for example, what we've seen with DMS, they'll open up a fight. I think we've seen it a couple times with Frozen Shelter, and then Play With Me pops the Hazel inside there. And okay, that's a good combo that's going to instantly burst down 1 or 2 players. So Buff Enjoyers, they need to find a team fight that gives them that early edge, but it's very hard to engineer that, as you say, Jason, when there's no objectives on the map.
I mean, it's got to be mid-boss in 40 seconds, but what's so worrying, though, for Buff Enjoyers, if you lose a team fight and it's pretty clean, you're going to lose the series. So they have to be very careful about what fight they take and, like, how cleanly they can win the fight. I don't think they necessarily close the game out if they win a fight right now heavy-handedly, because they're still going to have the respawns. They still have a lot of things to go through unless they just full send it through and hope they can finish it off in time. Well, we can already see, DMS, they're set up around mid-boss. They're looking for the fight here. And Buff Enjoyers, they're trying to get some ground, trying to get an avenue to play from. But with 13 seconds left, like there's still a lot of farm to be taken right before this fight kicks off.
Indeed. Both teams being patient. We know the DMS is extremely patient. They would rather be cautious and the game take longer
He's scouting.
than be too risky and lose.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you there. I think he was just scouting, trying to get some information because, again, there's no wards in the game and there's no creep or troopers in the middle. So you have to use some sort of way to get that vision. And he's ultimately back up in time before they do go for the mid boss anyways. And DMS have already given up the ground around it, you know, giving that freely to Buff Enjoyers to play from as they do look to push out some lanes here before they do go for the mid boss.
It's a really good point about getting that info, because at this point, yeah, you're looking for those, like, how is the other team positioning, how they set up, how many players are where. That information is vital at this stage of the game. It's a really good call out. And okay, we've got what are we calling it? The human ward spot? Yeah. The Buff Enjoyers.
Oh, he saw Playwithme coming through. He backs away in time. Like, this is such a tense moment. And buffs are going to be back up. Both teams immediately going to be going for those. Buff Enjoyers going to secure right. DMS going to secure left. And it's right back to middle here. You can see the lane 4 wave is pushing, though, up against Buff Enjoyers. And they're going to have to back away to clear it out, which might be the opportunity for DMS to go for the play. But again, for every single earn we've had has been on the side of Buff Enjoyers. That's so unfortunate for DMS. And we're seeing Playwithme just try to solo the mid boss and get it down to 60%. Try to force a mistake out of Buff Enjoyers.
Yeah, this is really well done, actually, because yeah, you need one player at this time in the game to burst it down.
Wait, no way. Is he trying to bait Buff Enjoyers towards this? Or is he just going to go for the full turn-in? Because if he baits him away, they can take mid-boss. If they don't contest it, he gets a free turn-in.
Yeah, it is interesting because that turn-in, it's probably, I would give it up if I was the other team, because that level of souls you're getting from that is probably not going to make much of a difference. He would be hoping to pull players away from the team fight by trying to turn this one in, but they're not. But right now, for Buff Enjoyers to make good use of this, they have to either turn on the Abrams and kill him, or they have to take the team fight whilst Abrams is not there. Neither of which really happened. And now Abrams will rejoin the fight. Psycho 13 will help everybody out as now the engagement starts around the mid structure, and good position in the high ground. And this battle is all about the tracking aim, and really nice work there from Zergi. Great tracking indeed on that airborne opponent, and the mid boss is now potentially up for grabs as it's about to go down, and Rejuvenators dropping from the sky. Frozen Shelter comes out, Seismic Slam as well, as there's so much chaos, and it's all about who gets the Rejuvenator. In comes the Storm Cloud, and that is absolutely perfect here for DMS.
Oh,
as they look to steal it, but no! Michaelis with an unbelievable steal, and 3 of them are still alive here, Jason.
Don't tell me they're going to escape with this as well. They're trying to take every Rejuvenator as possible. Listic and Piggy going to have theirs still online, as it looks like they're going to be finished off. Listic, the last one remaining, is being chased down by Playwithme here. What is happening? I mean, Playwithme almost died during his bullet dance, but a great ultimate. The Frozen Shelter out of Happex keeps him alive. And again, Buff Enjoyers, they get the mid buff, but they're going to lose their base here. 8 seconds left on Michaelis. I don't know if he can defend it by himself. DMS have to be careful, though. I feel like you take both shrines, you back out, and I feel like you're going to have to play for another mid boss here. I don't think you can commit to this. You do not want to get caught right now, only having 4 players left alive.
Oh, they're going to get the patron down as well. That's really nice. It's just going to be the weakened patron left. That's definitely a good job, and a job well done as they fall off now, just like you said. And this is problematic here for Buff Enjoyers. Are there any stragglers for them to find? There's quite a few players up at the moment here for DMS, so it's not really a fight to be taken as these players disengage. You know, sometimes you might find a quick kill in pursuit, but that's not going to be happening here. Saf is, fairly low there, but it doesn't seem like he's in any danger at this point. So farming it is here for Listic.
So Dan, I'm going to put our observers team through the ringer here, okay? Can you go to every player on Buff Enjoyers one by one? Because they have 2 flex slots, and I want to see how many souls they have apiece. 4K for Listic that he's sitting on, that he would like to turn into an item. I want to see the other players and how many souls they're sitting on and not having the slot suspended. Okay, so 1K refresher picked up for Piggy. So he's going to have double ultimates with the Kutsu bombs. 5K for Michaelis and Mirage. I mean, he's still kind of limited in what he wants to build or what he can pick up. 3.5K for Sharik. Like, it's tough, man, because you have to make these decisions of like, what items can I afford to get rid of and what items do I really need to counter what the enemies are doing to keep us in the game. They are down by 50,000 souls almost, and they have to make the correct moves every single way of the game if they want to be able to get back into it and take it to a map 3. Thank you, observers, by the way.
Goated. Yeah, Wolfie's farm and Playwithme's farm. That's where that's where all the difference is essentially between the two of them. Otherwise, the averages are basically the same for both teams. It is just Playwithme and Wolfie. So that's actually, I think, good news for Buff and Joyous. If that soul difference was spread across all of DMS, there's a world where I think that's a lot more challenging to deal with than Playwithme and Wolfie. Obviously, you'd have to actually either isolate those players or take somehow a fight without them. But speaking of isolation, there is Playwithme trying to find a kill. And might be really out here by himself. It's MKLS coming through as well to try to punish. And there's the last stand coming out as well. They're really going for this one. Majestic Leap to try to follow this one up. This could be a problem here for DMS as they are falling back. It is Buff and Joyous trying to take the engagement. They got to follow it up with the kills, though. Frozen Shelter to save DMS. Huge. That is a crazy save.
They only had 3 players there to defend against that push that's coming out of Buff and Joyous, who sent 5 players against them. The Frozen Shelter just forces a reset, and more importantly, buys time for DMS to rotate to help out. Like that ult out of Happex might have just saved this game for them. And I might be over-exaggerating, but it definitely felt like it, because they would have lost 3 players for sure, and that could have been Buff and Joyous turning it into flex slots, which will then again unlock all these souls they're holding on to.
I totally agree. More points to talk about. But hey, we've got another urn pickup here and potentially a team fight that's going to be brewing. It's going to be another urn going to Buff and Joy's base. We'll see if DMS can make their way there. Obviously, all the walkers are down and it's a quick dash across the map. Now, this is interesting because you don't necessarily have to commit to the urn, but you are forcing your opponent to react to your movement because after 20 seconds, they can see the urn on the map. And so with that, you're able to manipulate their movement and then sort of play against that. And that is part of the power of the urn.
Well, the question is, do you want to be in close quarter combat against DMS right now? I mean, luckily they do have their ultimates back online. They invested into this last fight, trying to go for the chase on lane 1. And DMS, I mean, you still have a little bit to go before mid-boss respawns back in. So it's not like you can really force an objective right now. And I think we're seeing like DMS just kind of be at a standstill. They're just kind of hoping for like one pick. They're hoping for one mistake, one overstep at a Buff and Joyous to close this out. And actually, look at Playwithme. He's kind of lurking off towards lane 4. I think he's looking for a 1v1 potentially, but he's not going to be given that opportunity, as it looks like Saf's going to rotate in from lane 1 with the teleporter to rejoin his team in lane 4.
Indeed, and the mid-boss comes up again. Will it be stolen yet again? That is the question. Now, Buff and Joyous, are they going to, like, what are they going to do here? I don't think they're going to feel comfortable taking the mid-boss fight or like trying to weaken it as we saw DMS doing previously, but we're going to get perhaps Playwithme maybe considering doing that, as he has been the one. But this is on tender hooks right now. Neither team really wants to make a mistake, obviously, and whilst DMS have a much better position to be the ones doing the bait for mid-boss, it looks like they're feeling a little bit shy about that. And let's not forget, the urn is still in play as well, and they definitely need that to not go to Buff and Joyous. Yeah,
and I think DMS, like Psycho, you have to be very careful about how you play with this. We did see last time, he goes for the turn-in, and DMS back away from mid-boss. They give up ground. Very smart, because we did see last week, again, between DMS and Pogelias Scumbria, at Sunset on his Wraith, one of the carries from his team, he went for the earned turn-in, and it left his team vulnerable to being attacked, and the entirety of DMS swarmed all over the rest of his team, and then they lost the map because of that. You don't want to see that happen again. DMS being very aware of this as they're looking to get some ground around mid yet again, finally using a high ground position here to potentially spot out players. More importantly, just give the information, which is going to be worth even more as the urn has been dropped and it will return.
Indeed, it's going to be down to this next team fight potentially between these two teams. 40 minutes almost in this game. Couple mid-boss steals coming in from Buff and Joyous to keep themselves in this one. It's still competitive here despite the soul difference. Ivy Bomb coming through there. Again, neither team wanting to really commit to the fight. They didn't feel like it's favorable.
See, if this was reversed, right, and MKLS was allowed to split push right now, like this would be the ideal situation for Buff and Joyous to be able to split push with someone that can afford to get back into the fight. Looks like mid-boss will be started. Rescue beam going to be used to rescue Psycho out of this one. Both teams just going to back away. Mid-boss not going to be finished off just yet. And maybe an overextension here on the position. Now we see Pocket. And yeah, DMS is still looking for an opportunity to look for a fight. And Piggy, I think that refresh now is going to be on cooldown here as he did fly it yet again.
Yeah, so interesting. Trying to use the mid boss to bait, then withdrawing from the fight, and it becomes quite challenging then because every player is trying to bait the other team into a fight that's unfavorable for them and favorable for themselves. But we are going to get a commitment into the mid boss here. DMS will be the ones in the pit trying to finish it off. Frozen Shelter comes down to try to block this Rejuvenator. It gets stuck in the Frozen Shelter. Seismic Slam is in. And is there a steal? Oh, okay. This time DMS, they'll lock it down, lock it in. The Rejuve is for them as they can now charge their way forward quite literally as we try to get those finishing shots and run this into the base, run this into the Patron pit to finish the game off finally here, Jason. It looks like it might be over.
D-Mob tried to go in. He got caught out while he's trying to go for his Affliction. Frozen Shelter to lock in the kills as well. Michaelis left alone to defend against the 6-man squad out of DMS who are looking to make a stand here and prove that they're the best in EU for the second week running. Michaelis going to be caught out. The charge not going to land, and he will fall, and that's going to do it, Dan. DMS have defended their title against the previous champions of Buff Enjoyers and hold on for a second week victory.
Such an impressive performance from them. Again, they proved themselves last week, and we had some questions going into this week. And map one, it felt like, hey, they had a comp advantage, but you know what? We saw great versatility from DMS. We saw great carry potential out of Playwithme, just expert stuff. And honestly, the haze that they brought, the way that they were using the kind of lane switching tech to keep the souls on the haze, to have the haze be so active. I've never seen a haze be so active at this level of play, and was a key component of many of the early kills that were secured. Beautiful stuff from DMS, Jason.
I feel like a part of that mistake made at the end wasn't necessarily demobbed. It was the fact that I think Buff Enjoyers pushed mid-boss past the 60%. And that means the mid-boss isn't going to scream again. And you never know if a team's doing it. So Demob kind of went to go check, expecting to be able to escape. I wonder if he got hit with a curse when he went in, so he couldn't escape. And then that just was the downfall of Buff Enjoyers right there. So well played by DMS. I'm honestly surprised to see them win. I really thought Buff Enjoyers were going to come back and reclaim that title, but I have to credit to DMS, man. Playwithme, Wolfie, like everyone on that roster did fantastic. And they get themselves an extra $1,000 now.
Absolutely. And we're going to bring CP back in for the post-game analysis for the wrap-up. And CP, how's it going, man? How's that?
Stuff, it's going great, and I feel like there's a lot to break down within this match, both in terms of rotations and just back and forth you had, but you can't really talk about it without talking about how Buff Enjoyers basically ended up on the wrong foot and stayed there the entire game. They played a comp that was supposed to be better in the early to especially the mid once they went to the Warden, but Playwithme redefined some of the rules that we usually see with Haze in these higher level tournaments. Haze, for a lot of